Fine, just transfer the money. What? You should send the money to her account, she's going through a tough time. But you gave her most of your salary already, didn't you? I don't think that matters. You're so cold. My name is Kelly, I'm 32 years old, and I work at a tax accountant office in Tall. My husband, Luis, is 2 years younger than me, and we met at the bar where he works. We became friends at work, and after a year of dating, we got married. Luis had a very different childhood from mine. He grew up in an institution because his mom disappeared when he was young, and his grandmother passed away a year later. He lived in an institution from the age of 10. He doesn't like talking about his past, so I never ask. When we got married, my parents asked if I was okay with our different backgrounds. I told them I liked him, and it wasn't a problem, which was mostly true, but I wasn't completely sure. Luis is a quiet, caring, and gentle person. I thought we could support each other forever. Unfortunately, after 2 years of marriage, things started to change. It all began when my mother-in-law showed up. She appeared out of nowhere, and it was an emotional reunion. She and Luis cried together, but when I saw them crying, I didn't feel moved. Instead, I thought she was being selfish. I'm so sorry, it's been so long. I had financial problems and didn't want to drag you into them. I know, I've been trying to find you for a long time. I didn't know how to tell you I lost my house, but I'm glad we finally met. Luis seemed happy to see her, but I couldn't forget that she had left him at a very important time in his life. If she had been struggling with debt, how could she not care about him when she left? It didn't make sense to me. She was wearing blonde hair, short skirts, and revealing tops. She sounded like someone who drank a lot, but I told myself not to judge by appearances. Luis was happy, so I tried to be happy for them. It was nice seeing you. I hope we can meet again. I'm sure we will. Thanks, but I don't know if I can come again. Why? I don't have a place to stay. Luis looked at me. I shouldn't do this, but isn't it wrong to tell your son you don't have a place to live? If you really care about your children, you wouldn't burden them. I don't think a mother who disappeared should do this. His look said, let her stay here, please. Fine, I don't like it, but maybe I'm overthinking it. I should help her, I thought. I made eye contact with Luis, agreeing silently. Mom, you can live with us. Really? Thank you. Wow, that was fast. You really know how to act. It's suspicious. Thank you so much. We'll live together from now on. She moved in without any real apology. After she came, Luis tried his best to take care of her, even though it seemed painful. I didn't think she would be a problem. I thought Luis might be trying to do things he couldn't as a child. But after 2 weeks, the real her showed up. It happened when Luis went shopping, and I was working late. It was the first time we were alone. So, you're a tax accountant? She asked in a different tone. Yes. You must have a lot of money saved up. I really don't want to talk about this. You talk differently when Luis isn't here. He loves me, you know that. He wouldn't believe anything bad you say about me. By the way, you're making money, right? Can you lend me some? I don't want to. Come on, you should help me. It's only right that someone like you, who makes money, should lend some to people in need. That's how the world works. I've never heard that before. That's why kids today don't understand the world. Hurry up and give me the money. I'm not giving you money. From then on, whenever it was just the two of us, it was always the same conversation. I didn't want to tell Luis, because I knew it would cause a fight, so I kept quiet, even though I could tell his mother was taking advantage of him. The first part was tough, but I tried to be patient. However, my patience only lasted for a month. Just when I was about to ask her to leave, she surprised me by saying she was moving out. This felt like a blessing I didn't even expect. Mom, are you really leaving? Yeah. I can't keep bothering you and Kelly. We're not those kinds of people. And you can't stay with us forever. Stop with the pearls. I'm happy about it, thanks. I found a new apartment. They said I don't even need a guarantor. I won't be a bother anymore. That's good. Let me show you. It's only 5 minutes away, so let's take a walk. Luis nervously followed his mom. After that, I started to lose trust in him. Since his mom showed up, my relationship with Luis had been neglected. He always put his mom's needs before mine, and he was pulling away from me. We walked to her new apartment and were shocked by how bad it was. It looked like a shady place, and I think it was even rumored to be haunted. Luis saw it and looked at his mom with tears in his eyes. Mom, please, come back to our home. It's fine. I'm living here now. Just visit me if you can. The next day, his mom moved out of our house. But I knew this was all part of her plan. Louise had fallen right into her trap. Kelly, can you help my mom somehow? Why should I? You saw that apartment. Don't you feel bad for her? That was just her trick. She's trying to get money from us. I'll never give her anything. Louise has no idea what kind of game she's playing. I'm not giving her any money. Why not? She's rented an apartment, so she must have money. She goes out, so she must be working. She's not working. She's volunteering at a nursing home during the day. Volunteering? That's a lie. I can't believe she's a volunteer. I won't believe it. What's your point? Nothing, I'm just not paying for it. Louise looked at me coldly. Kelly, you're fine as long as things are good for you, right? What do you mean? Kelly, you make more money than I do, and you think I should just listen to you. What are you talking about? When did I say that? It's in the way you act. Mom said it too. She said, Kelly is a little scary. I bet she left because of you. I felt like crying. What did he see in me before? You don't know anything, and now you're blaming me for everything. You don't even know your own mother. Do you know what I've been going through since your mother showed up? Have you ever thought about that? Don't try to make me feel guilty. After that huge argument, our relationship fell apart. We didn't speak for days. Then, a few days later, Louise called me. I answered to see what was going on. You're at work, right? Yeah. I'm really sorry, but I need you to visit my mom. Why? She hurt her leg and is having a hard time. She would really appreciate it if you went to see her, but I can't leave the store today because I have a vendor coming in. It would mean a lot if you could go. All right, I'll go after work, thanks. I sighed when I hung up. Even though things were difficult between us, Louis only called me when it was about his mom. I felt emptier and emptier. I pulled out the divorce papers and stared at them. I guess it's time to end this. After work, I went to the apartment. You're late. My mother-in-law's leg was bandaged. How are you feeling? Not well, that's why you're here. Hurry up and make me some tea. She sat on the sofa and started watching TV. I reluctantly went to the kitchen to make tea. Then I noticed a bank passbook in the cupboard. I glanced at my mother-in-law. She didn't notice. I quietly picked it up and checked the contents. Oh no, I couldn't stop myself from reacting. Shut up, I can't hear the TV. It took me a while to make the tea, but she kept complaining while watching TV. I looked around and saw she had nice teacups and dishes. I started to understand everything. Here's your tea, now I'm leaving. What are you talking about? Where's dinner? Why don't you cook it for yourself? You're the one who's paying for it. I don't think I should. You have plenty of money, don't you? She saw the passbook in my hand and quickly stood up. That's mine, don't you dare not give it back. She tried to reach for it, but there was no way she could reach me since I'm taller. I walked straight to the door, and she glared at me fiercely. Oh, I thought you broke your leg. You were limping just now. Just give it back to me. I left her apartment and went home. Louise greeted me. Thank you for going. My mom must have been in a lot of pain. No, she was fine. No, she couldn't have been. She must have been in pain. Did you give her the money? From the look on his face, he hadn't heard from his mom. What money? You didn't give me any money. No, don't you feel sad when you see your mom hurting? She needs money, and I thought you'd give it to her. So you think I should give her the money? Louise sighed. Fine, just transfer the money. What? You should send the money to her account. You know she's struggling. You gave her most of your salary, didn't you? I don't think that's necessary. You're so cold. I thought you'd understand after seeing your mom in pain. I've wasted so much time thinking about it. What have you been thinking about? Your mother's been pretending to be weak, because you're not nice at all. This is the only way she can get anything from us. I didn't know what else to say. I threw the passbook at Louise. Look at this. Do you still think she's poor? Wake up. What do you mean? Why does she have $70 million? She has money, but she keeps trying to get more from us. She left you alone when you needed her and then suddenly shows up asking to live with us and keeps asking for money, not just from you, but from me too. She asks me for money when you're not here. What makes you think this is the person you should protect? She's a hustler. If you still want to protect your mother, that's your choice, but I want a divorce. I'm done. You still don't believe me. You and your mom are the same. living in a shady house, trying to get money from me. You're just like her. I probably had more to say, but it didn't matter anymore. I couldn't understand why my husband believed his mother so much. He had waited for her for so long, but I couldn't tell him that he was being used and unloved. After that, Luis and I got divorced. I didn't get alimony. I couldn't take his money after his mother tricked him. I also didn't get any of the shared property. We agreed to keep our savings separate. A month later, Luis was waiting for me outside my office. I told him to just say what he needed. He told me something I couldn't believe. My mom got arrested for theft and fraud. She had been asking elderly people at the nursing home for their PIN numbers and passbooks. Their families reported her, and she's in jail now. She was arrested again for more crimes. Fortunately, the money she tried to get from Luis was safe. It was returned to the victims. Luis apologized and then disappeared from my life. It was sad to see him go. That was the end of my short marriage, but I was glad it was over. The darker side of Luis was too much for me. I hope I can find someone I can truly be with someday. I think I'm done with marriage for now. I'm more comfortable focusing on my career. I'm going to work harder and maybe open my own office someday. That's my new goal. Luis's mother was all about money, and the way Luis handled it was heartbreaking. Parents shape a child's character, don't they? Luis was truly a victim of his mother. I hope that both Kelly and Luis find happiness in the future. Thank you for watching until the end. Please subscribe to our channel if you liked the video. See you in the next one.
My sister-in-law, now mute and bedridden, was entrusted to my care by my in-laws, who had decided to take a vacation in Hawaii. Just before departing, my husband Jack made it clear that taking care of her was my responsibility, emphasizing that I shouldn't slack off. As soon as Jack and his family left for their vacation, my sister-in-law, surprisingly, sat up and suggested that we get going too. My name is Lisa, and at 29, I had abandoned my teenage dream of becoming a pop star, realizing its fleeting nature. I ended up in my late 20s, dating Jack, whom I met through a friend, largely due to my mother's persistent desire to see her grandchild. Jack, despite having once aspired to enter the entertainment industry, now worked at a prestigious trading company in downtown Manhattan. After college, I had worked at a bank until I got married, at which point I quit my job. On a visit to Jack's parents' house, I learned about his younger sister Lucy, who, as a child, had contracted encephalitis from influenza, leaving her mute and bedridden due to brain damage. Lucy's mother had primarily cared for her, but surprisingly, Lucy and I got along well, communicating through sign language. Over time, I naturally picked up sign language, and our bond strengthened. Despite this, my mother-in-law, who was quite different from Lucy, was consistently sarcastic and critical of me. Jack and I lived in a condo about 30 minutes away, yet my mother-in-law would occasionally show up unannounced, nitpicking and issuing traditional instructions like keeping Jack's shoes clean and neatly folding laundry. She referred to Jack as Jackie and insisted on outdated practices, such as not going to bed before him, regardless of how late he got home. During our dating and early marriage days, Jack had always been kind and never disagreed with me, despite his mother's influence. Initially, Jack was incredibly considerate. If I mentioned feeling unwell and suggested having dinner outside, he readily agreed. Likewise, if I expressed interest in a designer bag, he would purchase it for me the following month. However, approximately a year into our marriage, Jack began to change, or perhaps reverted to his former self. He started coming home late from work, consistently smelling of alcohol. On weekends, Jack claimed increasing work responsibilities, making him too busy for family time. Oddly, even during visits to his parents' home, he would decline my invitations to join him. Frustrated, I decided to confront him about the growing distance between us. "Jack, you've become so distant lately. It feels like you're a completely different person," I expressed. Jack glared briefly before dismissing my concerns. "That's not true. You're overthinking things," he replied. Unconvinced, I pointed out that he rarely spoke to me anymore. He told me to stop bringing it up and walked away, ending the conversation abruptly. One Sunday, Jack surprised me by announcing he was going home. This was a departure from his usual refusal to have me accompany him on such visits. Eagerly, I offered to join him, expressing a desire to see Lucy as well. Jack's reaction was mixed, and he remarked on our seemingly close friendship. Despite his subtle grimace, I drove us to Jack's family home in Nebraska. Along the way, we stopped at a bakery to buy pastries as a gift. Jack's mother, who typically frowned at my presence, lit up upon receiving the pastries. When we arrived, she greeted us with a frown, as if displeased to see me. Undeterred, I handed her the pastries, and her expression changed like a child receiving a cherished toy. Curious about Jack's father, I inquired about him, learning he was out at a meeting. Jack's mother asked if I needed something, to which I replied that I didn't, just having something on my mind. He replied, "I hadn't heard anything about this from Jack. What's going on? Did you have something to tell your father?" I asked. Jack retorted, "It's none of your business." "What do you mean? We're a married couple, aren't we? Can you just stop nagging?" His mother chimed in, "Exactly. If Jack doesn't want to tell you something, you shouldn't be prying." Recognizing the futility of arguing, I chose not to respond. Just then, Jack's sister appeared. "Oh, Jack, you're here," she said. Jack seized the opportunity, saying, "Sis, perfect timing. I have something to discuss." She inquired, "What is it?" Jack proposed, "I can take a long vacation next month. I was thinking about a family trip to Hawaii." "How about you, sis?" She replied, "I'll pass. I don't have a passport." I was taken aback. Jack, usually busy with work, was suggesting a trip to Hawaii. Concerned, I asked, "Jack, is everything all right with your job?" His mother seemed displeased with my involvement and said, "You shouldn't meddle with decisions Jack has made." "You're really nosy, aren't you?" Jack's mother then revealed the real reason for the meeting. I was to take care of Lucy during their vacation. Though momentarily surprised, I realized staying with Lucy was more appealing than going to Hawaii with my mother-in-law. I agreed to take care of Lucy, but I questioned why they had to bring me all the way there for such a discussion. Jack explained he expected resistance and wanted his mother to convince me forcefully if needed. Dumbfounded, I left the room to go to Lucy's room. Lucy was delighted to see me and asked how I'd been. When I explained Jack asked me to come along to their parents' house, Lucy remarked on Jack's change in behavior. Lucy suggested I stay over, and we had a great time chatting. An hour later, Jack came to get me, and we headed home. Lucy gave me a slight wink, hinting at a shocking truth and an even more shocking plan. A month later, on the day of the Hawaii trip, Jack and I went to his parents' house. Despite not going to Hawaii, I brought luggage to stay with Lucy for a week. As departure neared, the family insisted that taking care of Lucy was my job, and my mother-in-law added, "Please get along well with Lucy. It's better for you to stay here, isn't it? If anything happens to Lucy, it's all your fault." Unfazed, I returned to Lucy's room. At that moment, Lucy sprang up energetically and called out, "Come on, let's get going." This echoed a recent conversation where Lucy revealed she could walk and converse, a secret she had kept since last year. "I suppose, why have you been hiding this from the rest of the family?" Lucy began sharing an unexpected tale, saying, "Actually, my father and mother are both remarried. I'm my dad's child from his previous marriage, and my sister and brother are from my mom's side." Surprised by this revelation and considering the usual coldness from my mother-in-law towards Lucy, I couldn't help but think, "I thought so. Is that so?" Lucy confirmed, "Yeah, my mom despises me. And I didn't want to talk to her, so I pretended that I couldn't." Curious about her father's knowledge, I asked, "And your father?" Lucy explained, "Dad knows everything. He's always on my side." Understanding the situation, I said, "I see. That's why, regarding this trip to Hawaii, I'm thinking we should go too." Perplexed, I asked, What do you mean?" Lucy explained, "I mean I'm planning to go to Hawaii on the same day with you. We'll even stay at the same resort." Her proposal caught me completely off guard, and I responded, "What? I'd be thrilled to go to Hawaii with you, Lucy. But do you even have a passport? Confidently, Lucy revealed. Of course. I secretly got my passport last month. And don't worry about the expenses. My dad is covering our plane tickets and the resort, including yours. Excited about the unexpected turn of events, I said. I see. I'm really looking forward to this. That's how we ended up at the airport, Lucy and I, arriving in Hawaii early in the morning. My father-in-law, who had been supportive, was there to see us off. Expressing gratitude, I said, "Thank you, father-in-law. I feel guilty for all the plane tickets and resort fees you've covered." He reassured me, saying, "Don't worry about it. As long as you two have fun, I'm happy." After landing, we took a taxi from the airport and checked into the resort hotel. Lucy and I were sharing a room, and as we settled in, I mentioned to Lucy, "Your father seems pretty well-traveled." Lucy shared, "Yeah, he's been on several international business trips. He's even been to Hawaii a few times." Planning a surprise for Jack and the family, Lucy said, "So what's the plan? I'm guessing my mom and everyone will dine at the restaurant here tonight. I'm thinking of surprising them." Excited about the idea, I replied, "That sounds like fun. I'm excited. Should we get some rest to recover from jet lag?" Lucy agreed. That sounds like a good idea. Unable to sleep on the plane, we took a shower, climbed into bed, and quickly fell asleep. Waking up around late afternoon, Lucy was already awake and starting to wear makeup. Apologizing for sleeping too much, I reassured her, "No, don't worry about it. I just woke up too. We really had a good sleep, didn't we?" Fully recharged and ready for our battle. Around 7 o'clock, I suggested, "I'll go and check the restaurant." As I looked for Jack and his party, I found them dining joyfully from the shadows near the entrance. Venturing deeper into the restaurant, I spotted the back of a young woman I didn't recognize. This puzzled me, as there hadn't been such a woman when they left Jack's parents' house. Straining my ears, I could intermittently hear Jack and my mother-in-law's voices. "I'm glad it's not that woman today. Yeah, I really drew the short straw. She's tainted my family record. If only we had an elegant daughter like her from the start. I want to divorce her and start fresh soon. Try to find a reason for the divorce and extract hefty alimony from that woman. Even without a cause for the divorce, it's fine. I can fabricate as many as I want. She's so bad that I want to throw her in the trash. I want to see my grandchild from you and her." My mother-in-law was giving the woman a smile she had never shown me before. I was driven by the urge to step forward and see the woman's fate, but I held it in. I returned to my room and told Lucy that it took a while. "I'm sorry, I saw something shocking. Jack brought a woman that I've never seen before." "What?" I was about to scream. Jack and my mother-in-law were continuously bad-mouthing me, and Jack even said he would find a reason for divorce. That's terrible. Jack called me a bad catch, but seeing him with another woman, I felt relieved. Now I can divorce him outright. That's a good thing. Shall we make our entrance then? Lucy and I headed towards the restaurant hall. When we entered the restaurant, we requested to sit near Jack's table and were able to get a seat quite close to them. They didn't notice our arrival as we were sitting quite close. We could hear their conversation, which was still filled with derogatory comments about me. I was amazed and ended up giving a bitter smile at how they could badmouth me indefinitely. Seeing my face, Lucy gave a nod with a smile, a cue for us to begin our counterattack. I stood up from my seat, stepped forward towards Jack, and shouted, "Are you all having a good time?" I'll never forget the look on Jack and my mother-in-law's faces at that moment. Their mouths agape and eyes wide open, they froze for a few seconds. After a few seconds, my mother-in-law finally spoke. "Why are you here? And how did Lucy get here without a wheelchair?" At her words, Lucy stood up, gave my mother-in-law a smile, and said, "I don't need a wheelchair. Thanks to you, my body and speech have returned to normal. I must have caused you quite a bit of trouble for a long time. Lucy, when did you regain your ability to speak?" "I wonder when that was. Maybe last year. Then why did you hide it until now? Because it was better if you guys continued to believe that I couldn't speak. You and Jack were speaking ill of me earlier, weren't you? My mother-in-law's face turned pale in an instant. What do you mean? She asked. Yeah, we weren't saying anything bad about you, Lisa, Jack retorted. That won't work. I recorded everything on my phone. Do you want me to play it back right now? I countered. My mother-in-law fell silent, but Jack stood up. Lisa, you've been causing me trouble all this time, and now you're making these outrageous claims, he barked. Jack was the one making absurd claims, so I retaliated. Once I return back home, I'll immediately contact my lawyer to initiate our divorce procedure. You can't deny the fact that you're on a vacation abroad with another woman. Plus, you described being with me as drawing a blank lottery ticket. So, I expect you to demonstrate sincerity by paying a hefty compensation for that comment, I declared. At my words, my mother-in-law seemed to acknowledge her defeat, and her attitude abruptly changed. Lisa, dear, I really like you. Please try to get along with Jack. This woman is not involved with Jack, she pleaded. I'm sorry, but I can't do that. Since I am a blank lottery ticket, I cannot live with Jack. Please enjoy your time with this woman. Oh, and I might also seek compensation from her. Isn't that exciting? I smirked. The woman in question turned pale and began to tremble upon hearing my words. Unfazed by the public gaze, Jack fell to his knees and pleaded, Lisa, I beg you, don't make this a big deal. My company has strict rules about this, he implored. What's that? You don't sound sorry at all, I replied. Jack appeared taken aback, then tried again. Lisa, I beg you, forgive me. If my company finds out, I'll lose my job, he confessed. Though your place sounds better now, I will never forgive you. You are married, and yet here you are on an overseas trip with another woman, I said firmly. Upon hearing my words, my mother-in-law also fell to her knees next to Jack, pleading, Please forgive my son, tears streaming down her face. By this time, all the other customers were watching us, and the restaurant manager started walking towards our table. Seeing this, I got up and said, Well, Lucy and I will head back to our room. You all enjoy your Hawaiian vacation. I guess things will get a bit difficult when you get back home. Hearing this, Jack cried out at the top of his lungs, Please forgive me. I can't afford to pay any compensation. At his loud outburst, the restaurant manager frowned, instructed something to a nearby staff member, and then briskly told Jack something. It was a polite way of telling him that he was disturbing the other guests and needed to leave. However, Jack was taken aback, not understanding the manager's words. Soon, 2 buffed-up security guards arrived and hauled Jack away. Jack was sobbing and struggling, but he was no match for the 2 bulky men. My mother-in-law and the woman were dumbfounded, unable to utter a word, while Lucy and I were also surprised by the turn of events. I thought Jack got what he deserved. A week later, Lucy and I returned home. Jack was quickly released and seemed to have returned to his room. However, I later heard that he had been in a state of shock since returning to his room and had kept to himself until the end of the trip. The day after I returned home, I went to the law firm where my old college friend worked to request a divorce proceeding. Unfortunately, my friend was not present, but a female lawyer was assigned to me, who was very easy to talk to. I was able to explain everything that had happened. After listening to my story, she'd assured me that a divorce was possible, that I could claim alimony, and that she would investigate the woman who was with Jack in Hawaii before determining whether I could claim alimony from her as well. A month later, the female lawyer contacted me and informed me that it had been proved that Jack had been dating the other woman for about 6 months. Hence, she said it was possible for me to demand alimony from this woman too. I requested the female lawyer, Please squeeze as much alimony as you can from Jack and his woman. She smiled and nodded. 2 months later, I was officially divorced, and into my bank account was deposited the alimony from the 2. I mumbled as I saw the amount, and that's karma for calling me a blank lottery ticket. 3 months later, Jack and my mother-in-law suddenly visited my place. Despite it being only 3 months, they had lost a lot of weight and looked completely haggard. I asked them, "What do you want?" "I don't want to see your faces." Jack replied in a thin voice, "I'm sorry. Could you lend me some money? I've lost my job." And the woman ran away. "I don't even have money for food." My mother-in-law also spoke in a whisper. "I've divorced my husband too. I don't have money. Please, I beg you." My mother-in-law was in tears. I responded, "Too bad. I have absolutely no obligation to help you. And even if I did, I would never help you guys out. Now please leave." After they left, I sprinkled a large amount of salt at my entrance to get rid of bad energy from my house.
I relish the thought of your envious face catching a glimpse, but I'm not one to revel in cruelty, so I'll let it slide. It might be rather awkward for you to witness me, so why not take shelter in the bathroom or some other secluded corner? She let out a raucous laugh through the phone, taunting me mercilessly. I hold nothing but contempt for this woman, more than anyone else in the world. No, in the entire universe. 13 years ago, she stole my husband from me. Cutting ties would be a relief, but alas, fate has tied us together as biological sisters. After she abruptly ended the call, I held the phone to my ear for a moment, suppressing a small chuckle. My name is Ruth, a 37-year-old divorcee. My marriage crumbled within a mere 6 months, all thanks to the scheming actions of my own sister. I have an identical twin named Rachel. Our resemblance is uncanny, often leading even our closest friends to mistake us for one another. However, despite our similar appearances, our personalities couldn't be more different. I tend to be reserved, while Rachel is assertive and bold. I excelled in academics, while Rachel thrived in sports. Rachel has a habit of speaking her mind without filter, often criticizing even my choice of attire with remarks like, "How could you wear something so unstylish? People will think I lack style too because we're twins." That would be dreadful. Our tumultuous relationship isn't confined to our home. Rachel has a knack for stirring up trouble wherever she goes. During our school days, I frequently found myself harassed by girls from other schools because of her antics. "Hey, stop hitting on my boyfriend," she would shout, even when I had no idea who these girls were. "Not again, Rachel," I would sigh in exasperation. Rachel's penchant for snatching away anyone she fancied, regardless of their relationship status, only added fuel to the fire. While I blame the men too, Rachel's actions are particularly egregious. What's worse, she often loses interest in these conquests as quickly as she ensnares them, sometimes ending relationships in as little as a week. Rachel, you need to cease this foolishness. Have you ever considered the feelings of these other girls? And what about me? I'm suffering too, I once pleaded with her. Her response was dismissive, claiming that the jealousy of unattractive women was terrifying. As if her interference in my romantic life wasn't enough, she even had the audacity to belittle my boyfriend John. This man John is the same despicable ex-husband who callously discarded me 13 years ago. We became close while attending the same tutoring center, his quiet demeanor providing me solace in turbulent times. After graduating from the same university, we decided to tie the knot. Little did I know, just 6 months into our marriage, John would present me with divorce papers, uttering the words, "Please divorce me." I reached my breaking point, and I'm sure you know precisely why. Seated next to him was my sister, Rachel, her face smug with satisfaction. Taken aback, I stammered, I'm sorry, I don't understand. Did I do something wrong? I don't remember." Before I could finish, John slammed his fist on the desk, his voice booming, "Really? How dare you? You've been cheating on me. Can you still deny it after seeing this?" He thrust several pictures onto the desk, capturing a man and a woman entering a hotel together. To my shock, the images portrayed my sister, Rachel, entering a hotel with a man I didn't recognize. I couldn't comprehend what my ex-husband was accusing me of. No, this is Rachel. It's not me," I exclaimed. Rachel burst into tears, confessing, "I can't keep lying to you, John." John's expression softened as he turned to Rachel, thanking her for her honesty. I was left bewildered, unsure of what was happening. Then John directed his accusatory gaze back to me, launching into a fabricated tale that bordered on the absurd. According to him, I had been cheating on him, disguising myself as Rachel to deceive him. He had fully bought into this ludicrous narrative spun by my own sister. Furious, I responded to my ex-husband, "Are you serious, John? You've been with me for years, and you believe my sister, whom you've known for only a few months? Are you in your right mind? Are you an idiot?" My calm retort seemed to infuriate him further, leaving him only capable of glaring at me in response. To my astonishment, Rachel had the audacity to flirt with John. "Though you share the same face, your personalities couldn't be more different," she remarked, shamelessly attempting to charm him. "You're not charming at all." Rachel always listens to my grievances with a smile. She's so patient. I couldn't wrap my head around what I was hearing. Rachel's tears seemed so artificial, and behind them, I could sense her smug satisfaction. Rachel had always been a master at playing men, ever since our school days, but her targets had shifted with her career. Now she sought men of status and wealth. John, my ex-husband, who worked for a prominent corporation and hailed from a well-off family, fit her criteria perfectly. It dawned on me that she must have set her sights on him from the moment I introduced them at our wedding. My ex-husband had been completely taken in by my sister's deception. I never imagined that the man I had been with for so long could be so easily fooled. In that moment, any lingering feelings I had for him faded rapidly. "You two are despicable. Do as you please, but never show your faces in front of me again," I declared, my voice trembling with suppressed emotion. Despite the tears threatening to spill, I managed to hold them back. Without hesitation, I filled out the divorce papers and tossed them at the two of them. I knew my sister's cunning too well. She and John probably hadn't consummated their relationship yet. Pursuing compensation from them would be a daunting task, but if it meant ridding myself of their presence, I didn't care about the money anymore. Upon returning to my parents' house, their fury at my sister's actions led them to disown her. When questioned about her reaction, she brushed it off, saying, "Oh really? I don't care. But if you're having money trouble, they'll come begging to me." Okay, bye then, trivializing even her own parents' feelings. A friend later informed me that my ex-husband and my sister had tied the knot just 3 months later. I was left stunned, unable to even shed a tear. For 13 years since then, I had not laid eyes on my sister and her husband. Then, out of the blue, I received a call from an unknown number on my cell phone. "Hello, Ruth." The voice on the other end greeted me, instantly recognizable. I couldn't fathom how she had the audacity to address me as Rachel. "I don't know how you have the nerve to call me Rachel," I spat out, incredulous. Rachel chuckled in response, her tone lacking any semblance of remorse. "Are you still holding a grudge? You're always so gloomy, Ruth. But anyway, I have a favor to ask," she continued, her words dripping with nonchalance. "I'm pregnant. Oh, and the father is John, whom you love so dearly. Haha. So I thought you could be the one to break the news to our parents about their first grandchild, since they won't listen to me." Her brazenness left me speechless. "What reason do you have to be so cheerful when you've been disowned?" I retorted, my frustration simmering beneath the surface. But Rachel simply laughed it off, as if my words were inconsequential. "How many years has it been?" 13 years, I believe. "You're probably still living alone in our parents' house, nursing your grudges," she taunted. "Well, I'll be the one to give them a grandchild instead of you." Rachel had always possessed a knack for getting under people's skin. "I'd love to witness your envy, but I'll spare you the sight." "It would be too pitiful," she added, her laughter echoing through the phone. "It'll be awkward if you see me, so why don't you hide in the bathroom or something?" With that, she abruptly ended the call, leaving me to stew in silence. I held the phone to my ear for a moment longer, chuckling at the absurdity of it all. When the weekend arrived, I was lounging in the backyard when my phone rang again. Glancing at the screen, I saw that it was from a blocked number, undoubtedly my sister's doing. Annoyed, I answered the call, snapping, "Hey, unblock me already." Rachel's voice came through the line, unrepentant. "What's wrong with blocking someone you don't want to hear from?" "That's what call blocking is for," she retorted casually. "Oh, but maybe you don't understand because you're stupid." I couldn't help but laugh sarcastically at her arrogance. Suddenly, I heard a crash on the other end of the line, indicating her irritation. I've come all this way. Why is nobody home? I told you I'd come today, didn't I? Huh? You were serious. I initially thought you were joking. I responded calmly to my younger sister's enraged and slightly shaky voice. It was apparent she was standing in front of our old house, the one none of us resided in anymore. Concerned about the potential disturbance she was causing, I swiftly provided her with my current address and hung up the phone. After about an hour, the doorbell chimed and there stood Rachel and John, her sullen expression matching his. Without preamble, Rachel launched into her tirade. You've got some nerve. And what is this place? Why on earth would someone like you be living in such a nice apartment? Her eyes blazed with anger. Unfazed by her outburst, I calmly informed them that the neighbors wouldn't appreciate the commotion. Inviting them inside, I led Rachel to the room, where she seemed taken aback by its size. Suppressing a smirk, I gestured towards our mother, quietly observing from the couch. Well, you said you had something to discuss. I don't mind at all. But if I'm in the way, should I hide in the bathroom or something? I quipped sarcastically, eliciting a sharp retort from Rachel. Moving closer to our mother, Rachel nervously greeted her. Hi, Mom. Long time no see. I'm pregnant, which is why we wanted to discuss if it's possible for John and me to stay here for a while. Suppressing a burst of laughter at her audacious request, I exclaimed, Wait, you want me to live with you guys? No way. Have you forgotten what you did to me in the past? Absolutely not. But Rachel cut me off sharply, snapping, Ruth, just shut up. This house is still under Dad's name, right? You can't even get remarried, and you're still leeching off our parents. How pathetic for a single woman like you. With a smug grin, Rachel declared, Great job taking care of our folks. From now on, John and I will live here and take care of them. So can you leave? Oh, and where's Dad? Is he at work? I had reached my limit, but it was our mother who spoke up first. With quiet solemnity, she informed us, Dad's gone. He passed away. Those few words hung heavily in the air. My parents were always serious people, and despite my divorce 13 years ago, they had always apologized to me, even though it was Rachel's fault. My father, in particular, used to express regret, saying, Maybe it was my fault for not raising her better. I'm sorry, Ruth. I'm really sorry. His depression deepened to the point where he found it difficult to continue working. At the time, both of my parents were in their early 50s, and we were surviving on my income and Mom's part-time job. A while later, my father was diagnosed with cancer and passed away 10 years ago. Just before he died, he made a request. Don't tell Rachel anything. I don't think I'll make it to heaven if she comes to my funeral. True to his wishes, Mom and I didn't contact Rachel. We moved into our current house about 5 years ago. Mom had developed issues with her leg due to overworking, and we decided against renovating our old house, situated atop a hill, fearing it would be too much for her to manage. Since moving into this accessible home, Mom's leg had been feeling much better. Though I tried to maintain composure, thoughts of my late father threatened to overwhelm me. Tears welled in Mom's eyes, mirroring my own sorrow. Predictably, Rachel's response to her grief was callous. Too little, too late. Besides, it's not my fault Dad got sick. In fact, you're living in such a nice place now because of Dad's inheritance, right? That's not fair. What about my share? Didn't I have the right to inherit? She spat out, nonsensical accusations slipping effortlessly from her lips. Without hesitation, Mom retorted, her anger palpable. Inheritance? There's no such thing. You only came to us when you were in trouble, doing stupid things before your marriage. How many times do you think we paid alimony because you messed around with a married man? Live with you? Never. You must be joking. Don't be ridiculous. It was the first time both Rachel and I had witnessed Mom so enraged. Sensing the tension, Rachel fell silent. Then John, who had remained quiet like a puppet until now, interjected, Rachel, you've been deceiving me, haven't you? Ever since. I married you, and my life's been a mess. You're a reckless spender, and you don't do any housework. My ex-husband's words nearly made me burst out laughing. He must be quite something to have put up with her for 13 years. Moreover, when he approached me, he said, Ruth, I've been regretting our divorce. Do you want to start over? Let's let bygones be bygones. When he tried to touch me softly, I felt a chill run down my spine. No way. Please, let bygones be bygones. Who does he think he is? Is he stupid? It's not his place to say that, I thought, just as I was about to dodge his touch. Suddenly, the door to the next room burst open. "Could you not touch her with your dirty hands, please?" a man exclaimed as he appeared, catching both of us off guard. Ignoring Rachel's murmurs of confusion, I explained, "I told you to stay hidden because I didn't want to involve you." He responded, "I couldn't stand it when he tried to touch you, Ruth. Besides, I think having a third party will help the discussion, don't you think?" Exasperated, I introduced them. Okay. This is my husband, Alex, and Tony, come here. This is our son, Tommy. He's 8 years old." Tony, who had been peeping out from behind the door, glared at Rachel and her husband. "Huh? You're remarried? Unbelievable." "Why?" Rachel was more surprised than anyone that I had a husband and a son. My ex-husband, John, was equally shocked, gaping like a fish out of water. "What do you mean? Why? How many years do you think it's been?" "It's been 13 years. 13 years, and despite all that time passing, you guys haven't changed one bit." Though, I added somewhat sarcastically, their faces turned bright red. I met my current husband, Alex, shortly after my father passed away. We were colleagues for a while, and one day he asked me out. When I rejected him, saying that I was a divorcee, he responded, "Does being divorced mean you can't remarry?" He asked me out once more, and we got married a year later. Our son, Tony, was born the following year. Alex treats my mother very well, doesn't mind us all living together, and my in-laws, who already live with Alex's brother and his wife, have reassured me, saying, "We're glad you're here for Alex." It was Alex who proposed moving to our current house, concerned about my mother's mobility. Facing the two shocked individuals, I firmly stated, "My mother and I are living our lives here. Can you not disrupt?" Turning my attention to Rachel, I continued, "You said you were pregnant. How many months along are you?" Their flustered responses to my question hinted that Rachel was likely lying about being pregnant. I had been married to John for only 6 months, and I never got pregnant. That fact had been the reason my former mother-in-law used to make snide comments. If Rachel wasn't pregnant, it meant that was probably the case. Rachel seemed to get along with my bad-tempered former mother-in-law. Unable to endure the harsh glares from my family, the two hastily left our house. I mean, I had heard stories, but is she really your sister? "She does look like you, but her character," Alex remarked, trailing off. "Anyway, it's settled for now," he concluded with a smile, to which I responded with a bitter smile. Really? Later that evening, the doorbell rang incessantly. Watching the monitor, I sighed. They came after all, I murmured to myself. Opening the door, I found Rachel and John standing there with pale faces. "We need help. Can you lend us some money?" they pleaded, kneeling down. My husband looked puzzled, but my mother and I felt differently. During the day, while waiting for a call from Rachel, my mom received a call from a certain individual, a friend of my deceased father, who currently rented our old home. His family was living there now. When I returned home, I found the flower buds in the garden ravaged and the windows cracked. The security footage clearly showed a man and a woman, with the woman infuriated, stomping on the flower beds and hurling stones at the windows. Of course, it was my enraged sister, Rachel. During a phone call with me, Mom had given Rachel's contact information to Dad's friend, and upon learning about Rachel's actions, he was furious. It seemed that in the damaged garden, there were rare flowers that were difficult to grow, and they asked for compensation. They seemed to be struggling financially to the point of having difficulty with housing, so I expected them to turn up again. But I never thought they'd show up that very day. I must admit, their audacity impressed me. "I can give you some money, but there's one condition," I stated firmly as I watched them trudge home with slumped shoulders. Despite myself, I couldn't help but laugh inwardly and think, serves you right. In their hands was a written pledge I had just made them sign. I had ensured they wrote in the pledge that they would never approach me again, in return for me taking responsibility for this incident. But Rachel is still my sister by blood. It's hard to completely cut ties with her. There may come a time when she'll use the power of the authorities to approach me. When that time comes, I'm prepared to fight using the audio recordings I secretly made 13 years ago. This time as evidence. Because you see, I have no intention of forgiving my sister and her husband anytime soon. Later, A friend told me that my ex-husband had immediately resigned from the big corporation after our divorce and started working as a staff member in a fortune-telling establishment run by my former mother-in-law. Because they were family, he was paid a high salary, and he and my sister seemed to have been living a life of luxury. However, a few months ago, my former mother-in-law suddenly passed away from illness, and my ex-husband, who had no talent for fortune-telling, took over as her successor. But the establishment quickly closed down. In their desperation, the couple claimed, "This is a bracelet that our late mother lovingly made," and targeted the people who had faith in my former mother-in-law. However, a whistleblower exposed their lies and the victims formed a group. The victims began flocking to the establishment every day, and my sister, who no longer had a place to live and work, came to ask for my help. I was so irritated by their audacity. However, seeing that the police have started moving, it's probably only a matter of time before the two of them are held accountable for their crimes. After that, we moved again. The reason was my husband Alex's job transfer. "Can I really come along?" Mom asked apologetically, to which Alex, my husband, responded with a chuckle. "What are you talking about? You're an important part of our family, Mother. Even if you resist, I'll carry you over my shoulder and take you along, okay?" Upon hearing Alex's light-hearted joke, Mom let out tears of gratitude. "Grandma, you're crying again. Here, have a Kleenex." Tommy, serving his emotional grandmother, was concerned but still smiled. As I watched my family, I felt a wave of gratitude for the happiness I felt. My name is Rachel, and I'm a 33-year-old homemaker. My husband, Adam, and I have been married for 4 years, but we haven't been able to have a child yet. We're undergoing fertility treatments, but conceiving has proven difficult. One day, as I was returning from the grocery store, I noticed a little girl, a complete stranger, squatting in front of my house. I wondered why she was outside in the cold, winter weather without a coat, so I approached her and asked, "Are you waiting for someone? Can you tell me your name?" "Selena." "Selena. Okay. Where's your mother?" "Mommy went somewhere," she replied. "Are you lost? What's your mother's name?" "Mary." "Mary?" My heart sank. Mary, the sender of the letter, was my older sister. She had left home at 20 and never returned. It's been nearly 17 years since we last saw her. As a teenager, she often ran away, got into trouble with men, and caused financial and emotional strain. Now to find out she had a child. Selena handed me a piece of paper. My hands shook as I opened it. Inside were the words, "Take care of this child for a while." "No way," I whispered. "Are you Mary's daughter?" "Mommy said to stay here because you're her sister," Selena explained. I took her hand and led her inside. She was freezing and trembling. I wondered how long she'd been outside. Mary had always been an irresponsible sister, but leaving her child like this was shocking. I'd always wanted a child, but couldn't have one. Pushing aside my feelings, I turned on the stove and wrapped Selena in a warm blanket. "Selena, are you hungry?" "Yes, I haven't eaten anything since yesterday." "You haven't eaten?" My concern deepened. "I'll get you some food right away." I heated up some pumpkin soup for her. Yesterday, I made some pumpkin soup and gave it to Selena right away. It was her first time trying it, and she eagerly drank a lot, clearly enjoying the taste. "This is delicious, it's really good," she exclaimed with a big smile. I was delighted to see her enjoy the soup so much, but it also saddened me, as I wondered what kind of meals she was used to. Instead of questioning her about her usual diet, I focused on cooking more food for her to enjoy. I made fried chicken, an omelet, and rice, and she devoured everything, praising each dish as delicious and tasty. Once she seemed completely satisfied, I suggested we take a bath. It seemed she hadn't bathed in a few days and her hair was greasy. "Selena, how about a bath?" I asked. Her expression tensed for a moment, and I could tell she wasn't entirely comfortable with the idea. "You don't like baths?" I asked. "No, it's fine," she replied hesitantly. I hurried to the bedroom to find some smaller clothes for her to wear as pajamas. When I returned to the living room, Selena was gone. Hearing water running in the kitchen, I peeked in and found her trying to wash her hair in the kitchen sink. "What are you doing? The water is so cold," I exclaimed. "You'll catch a cold." Selena apologized, but I assured her she didn't need to. I wrapped her in a blanket and took her to the bathroom. She seemed amazed as I led her inside. "This is just like the house I saw on TV," she exclaimed. From her reaction, it seemed the house where Selena lived did not have a proper bathroom. It broke my heart to think that Mary made her wash in cold tap water from the kitchen to save on gas money. Holding back tears, I undressed Selena and gently placed her in the warm bathtub. "It's so warm. Are baths always this warm?" she asked, eyes wide with wonder. "Yes, they are. From now on, you can take a warm bath every day," I said. "Really? I'm so happy," she replied with a big smile. I helped Selena warm up and get clean in the bath. Her hair was slightly tangled, but I treated it to make it more manageable, and she soon looked like herself again. After dressing her in my loungewear, we relaxed on the couch in the living room as we waited for Adam to come home. When Adam walked in, Selena seemed startled and drew back in fear. "I'm home," he called out. "Welcome back," I replied. "This is the girl I told you about." "Hello," Adam greeted, but Selena continued to shy away. "It's okay," I reassured her. "This is my husband, Adam. He's very kind, so you don't need to be afraid of him." I explained the situation to Adam, and he was visibly upset. "What? That's unforgivable. We'll keep her here for a while." Of course, I agreed. How could she abandon her own child? Once Adam and I had discussed the situation, we went back to Selena, who was curled up in the living room. I spoke gently to her. "Selena, as I mentioned, this is my husband, Adam." "Hi, Selena. Please call me Uncle Adam," he added. Selena nodded timidly, and I went on to explain. "The three of us will be living together here for a while. Is that okay with you?" "Is it really okay for me to stay here?" Selena asked hesitantly. "Of course," I said with a reassuring smile. "And once we get settled, you'll be able to go to elementary school." "I've never been to school," Selena said quietly. "You've never been to school? What about kindergarten?" "I haven't gone to kindergarten because I'm no one," Selena mumbled. My heart ached hearing her words. She was too young to understand why she might feel this way. I decided not to press her further that day and let her rest instead. The next day, we would find a way to help her adjust to her new life. I informed my parents about Selena's situation, and they rushed over to see us. Upon meeting Selena, they introduced themselves as her grandparents, Grandma and Grandpa, and enveloped her in a comforting hug. Selena seemed puzzled but happy, as if she had never realized she had grandparents before. After entrusting Selena to my parents' care, I headed to City Hall to obtain Mary's family records. To my surprise, Mary was unmarried, and there was no record of any children. It appeared that Selena's birth had never been officially registered, making her essentially a non-existent child who never received any formal notices, such as enrollment for elementary school. This revelation shed light on why Selena referred to herself as no one. After consulting with various authorities, including the Child Consultation Center and the municipal office, we finally managed to establish Selena's family register. I happily informed her, "Selena, now you can go to elementary school. I'm so happy for you." By this time, it had been over a month since Selena came to live with us, but she hadn't opened up much. She always seemed skittish, especially whenever Adam or I moved. Additionally, whenever she made a mistake, she would apologize excessively, curling up her body and covering her head. It was evident that Mary's past actions had left a lasting impact on her. "Selena, you don't have to apologize so much," I reassured her. "Uncle Adam and I will never get mad at you, and we will never harm you. I promise." "Really?" Selena asked with a glimmer of hope. "Of course," I replied sincerely. I made a promise, but despite that, Selena's shyness persisted. However, as time passed, she gradually became more talkative and even began to smile more often. Then one day, Selena blurted out, "I wonder when she will come for me." Those words struck a chord with me, evoking a sense of sadness. Despite Mary's mistreatment, Selena still longed for her mother. Since Selena's arrival, every day had been filled with joy for me. We had wanted children so badly and treated Selena as our own daughter. We hoped she would stay with us for a long time. The day after Selena's statement, she received an invitation to elementary school. I was relieved that she would finally experience the same school life as other children. Now that it's settled, we need to prepare for school, I said to Selena. We'll need to buy a school bag, stationery, and lots of clothes. Let's go shopping today for new clothes and stuff. I can get new clothes. I've already got some, Selena replied. It's not enough. You'll need more comfortable clothes for school, I insisted. So Selena, Adam, and I went to the shopping mall and got everything she needed for school. I was so excited about preparing for her school entrance that I ended up buying a lot of clothes and stationery. As we headed home, the three of us laughed and joked about buying too many things. However, to my surprise, I saw Mary standing in front of our house. Mom, Selena exclaimed. Mary responded coldly, It's not welcome home. What were you thinking? How dare you come here? I stepped in, trying to calm the situation. Hey, calm down. Don't yell. It's not productive. First, you need to apologize to Selena. But Mary only glanced at Selena and refused to make eye contact. What are you trying to do? I asked. We can't just stand here talking. Let me in the house. I'll do it even if you don't tell me. Let's go, Selena, Mary said, ignoring my question. I decided to let Mary in and ask her what was going on. Is this your husband? She asked, pointing at Adam. He's a nice guy. Nice to meet you. I'm Adam, he replied. I don't know how to say this, given it's our first meeting, but the way you've treated your child makes you an unfit parent. Mary seemed taken aback by Adam's boldness. You're too arrogant, my brother-in-law. You can't talk to me like that. You don't know me. Maybe not, but I do know you didn't take care of her properly. How could you neglect your own child? Adam countered. Mary, clearly irritated by our accusations, seemed unable to grasp the gravity of her actions. I was perplexed by her lack of accountability. I asked Selena how she felt about seeing her mother, and it was clear she was still scared. She couldn't look Mary in the eye and recoiled in fear. Initially, I assumed Selena missed her mother, but now I wasn't so sure. As I was contemplating this, Mary spoke up. You two don't have kids, right? She asked. No, but so what? I responded. Well, I'm going to leave this child with you, she declared. I've raised her through the toughest stages of her life. You should be grateful to have an older kid now. Adam was incredulous. Do you even know what you're saying? You're abandoning your own child as though she's an object to be handed off. I know exactly what I'm saying, Mary shot back. I'm giving you childless people a kid to raise. You should be thankful. I shook my head in disbelief. That's outrageous. We're not giving her back to you, even if you ask. We've already made her a family register, and she's going to start elementary school next month. We'll make sure she's happier than she was with you. Oh, so you've made a family register for her, Mary retorted, seemingly indifferent. I did, I responded. Why didn't you file a birth certificate? Because if I had, they would know I have a child. I didn't want to disrupt my life for such a selfish reason. Mary's admission explained why Selena had been unable to attend kindergarten or elementary school. Her callous attitude continued to baffle me. That's not right. Selena deserves an education. What you've done is neglect, not just active truancy, I told her, knowing that reasoning with Mary was pointless. Mary had apparently broken up with Selena's father before Selena was born and had never registered the birth. To date other men, she often left Selena alone, pretending to be unmarried and childless. Her goal was to find a new partner and raise her child. We'll take care of Selena, I said, firm in my decision, but please don't come back to see us again. Then give me 10 million yen. I'm giving you a person, so 10 million is a small price to pay, right? Mary demanded. What are you talking about? You're trying to sell your daughter? I was horrified. Of course, I'm not going to pay you though. Selena is a human being, I said firmly. When I refused to pay, Mary threatened to take Selena back and confine her at home, forcing her to wash with cold tap water again. I won't let you do that, I said. Fine, 10 million then, she retorted. Well, I can't get it for you today. You'll have to come back later to pick it up. I'll keep Selena here until then, I said, pretending to agree to her demands to keep Selena safe. Whatever. I don't want to be bothered with her anyway, Mary replied dismissively. Though I had no intention of paying Mary, I lied quickly to prevent her from taking Selena away. Knowing Mary might return to reclaim her, Adam and I considered what steps we could take next. But before acting, we wanted to understand how Selena felt. "Selena, do you want to go back to your mommy?" I asked her gently. "I don't want to go back. Mom scares me. She always bumps into me and says mean things." "I don't want to go back," Selena confessed. "I see," I said gently. "The other day, you mentioned wondering when your mother would come for you. Was that because you were afraid she'd make you leave us?" "Yes," Selena replied, her eyes downcast. "I was worried that if Mommy came, I'd have to go back to that house. But I want to stay here forever." "I understand," I reassured her. "We'll do everything we can to make sure you can stay with us from now on." With Selena's feelings clear, Adam and I decided to investigate Mary's background further. We contacted an investigative firm known to Adam and discovered Mary was now engaged to a successful lawyer. We formulated a plan to keep Mary from taking Selena away and worked discreetly to prepare everything. A week later, when everything was set, we informed Mary that we had the money and invited her to our home for the exchange. During the meeting, I had my parents care for Selena. When Mary arrived, she immediately asked if I had the money. "I won't give you the money, and I won't give you Selena either," I declared firmly. Mary's expression turned sour. "I came all the way here because you said you had the money ready. Now give it to me. Do you realize how heartbroken Selena is?" I challenged her. "You're trying to sell your own child for money. Unbelievable." "How I raise my child is none of your business," Mary shot back. "Children grow up just fine on their own. You don't understand because you don't have kids. Did you even tell your boyfriend about having a child?" I asked pointedly. "Of course not. He's a successful lawyer and we're getting married next year. We plan to live happily ever after. Don't bother us," Mary said dismissively. Just then, the door opened and Mary's fiancé, the elite lawyer, walked in. He had heard our conversation. "Don't tell me what you just said is true," he said, shocked. "Did you lie to me? What's going on? Why are you here? You told me you were unmarried and childless." "I've never been married," Mary said. "I just happened to have a child by mistake." "By mistake? That's a terrible thing to say," Adam exclaimed, disgusted. The lawyer confronted Mary. "I was about to marry you without knowing you cheated on me. Of course, I'm breaking off the engagement. You lied to me, so you'll need to pay me alimony." "Wait, broken engagement alimony? Please don't leave me," Mary pleaded. "Shut up. I can't marry a woman who treats her child like that." "I don't even want to see your face," the lawyer replied, turning his back on her. Mary turned to me, her eyes filled with anger. "Rachel, you brought him here. Why did you do this to me?" "Because I knew I couldn't handle it the usual way. I'm going to discuss Selena's case with this lawyer," I explained. "I was suspicious, but after hearing your words today, I realized the truth. From now on, this lawyer will represent me and my family." "You'll regret making an enemy of a lawyer," Mary threatened. Soon after, a police officer arrived at our house. I had previously reported Mary for child abandonment, and authorities had secretly recorded our previous conversation. I also informed them of her visit that day. Mary was taken into custody for child neglect and abandonment, facing a stint behind bars. Although it was a lengthy and complex process, Selena was eventually allowed to stay with us permanently. The lawyer demanded compensation from Mary for breaking the engagement, and she faced legal consequences. After her release from prison, Mary lost both her fiancé and Selena. Additionally, she had to work hard to pay the alimony and child support, which took a toll on her appearance and ability to attract men. Recently, she stormed into our house, crying and demanding Selena back. "She's my baby. Give her back." "What are you talking about? Selena is ours now. I won't let you take her back," I told Mary firmly. "No, not mommy. Uncle and auntie are mommy and daddy," Selena chimed in. Mary, rejected by her own daughter, walked away in despair. I vowed never to let her regain custody of Selena. Mary would have to reflect on her actions alone. Meanwhile, Adam and I have stopped our painful infertility treatments. The three of us now live our days filled with laughter and joy. I'm grateful for the happiness Selena has brought into our lives, and I hope to spend the rest of my life giving her all the love I can.
My mother suffered a stroke, and if it's severe, she may lose the ability to walk or require daily care. The day after receiving this distressing news, I returned home to find my husband Jake and my mother-in-law engaged in conversation in the living room. Tears welled up in my eyes as I shared the situation with them, but Jake's response was unexpectedly cold. "What are you talking about? She's elderly, right? Shouldn't we just leave her care to a facility?" He callously remarked. "You must be joking. She's my only mother." I responded, searching for the right words. However, my plea was met with a dismissive attitude. "You're already a part of this family, right? You shouldn't get involved in your family matters. Even if there's an expense, we can't bear it." "My son is right. I wish that old woman would just pass away soon," added my mother-in-law. Those words shook me to the core. I might have endured such remarks if they were directed at me, but I couldn't forgive the insult towards my mother. In that moment, I silently vowed to myself that someday I would find a way to stand up to these two. That opportunity presented itself a year later. I, Lisa Furr, was a 29-year-old housewife. Prior to living with my mother, I had dedicated myself to a successful career at a major company. My father's sudden demise from illness left only my mother, Susan, to be my constant support. In my heart, she held a special place. Her warm embraces and unwavering strength were a daily reassurance. Despite not leading a lavish life, my mother took on various part-time jobs to provide everything I needed, including tuition for hobbies and classes. Driven by a deep desire to one day offer her a comfortable life, I studied diligently and eventually secured a position at the company of my dreams. When my employment was confirmed, my mother shared in my joy by embracing me. "I'm so glad your dreams have come true," she expressed her genuine happiness. Jake Fuller, who later became my husband, was my first mentor at the new job. He guided me through the intricacies of the role, and our mutual trust deepened. As we started having dinner together more frequently, our emotional connection naturally grew. Following his passionate confession, our relationship evolved into a romantic one, and we began dating. Jake was assertive and experienced, leading our relationship with confidence. At 26, he made a significant proposal. "Lisa, would you start a new chapter with me? I promise to make you happy." "Thank you, Jake. I'm truly overjoyed," I replied, accepting the radiant ring he offered. As I slid it onto my finger, a profound sense of happiness enveloped me, and Jake gazed at me with deep intensity. "Lisa, how do you think we should tell your mom about our marriage?" "Well, I believe no matter how we put it, she'll be overjoyed. After all, she genuinely wants the best for us," I replied, nestled in Jake's embrace as we admired the twinkling city lights, feeling like we were on cloud nine. A few weeks later, the moment arrived to share our engagement news with my mother. As we made our way to her home, a mix of excitement and nervousness filled my heart. When we finally broke the news, her eyes immediately welled up with tears of happiness. "Lisa, it feels like a dream. Congratulations from the depths of my heart." "Thank you, Mom." "Please don't cry," I urged gently. "Jake, promise me you'll take good care of my dear Lisa. Ensure she experiences the happiness that outweighs any hardships she's faced," my mother implored, her words resonating deeply with Jake, who nodded earnestly. "Absolutely, I will treasure our future together," Jake vowed, his sincerity evident. Witnessing the heartfelt exchange between my mother and Jake filled me with immense joy. Later, we arranged to visit Jake's family home. I knew that his parents had divorced when he was young, and now he lived with his mother. Despite feeling nervous about meeting my future mother-in-law for the first time, I was determined to make a positive impression, carefully selecting my attire and hairstyle, and picking out special traditional sweets as a gift. I arrived at their home. "Nice to meet you. I'm Lisa Paston. I'm looking forward to getting to know you." I greeted her tentatively, noticing her scrutinizing gaze. There was a hint of judgment in her eyes. "Ah, Jake, so you've chosen a girl who appears quiet and reserved. That's unexpected," she remarked, catching me off guard with her blunt observation. "Mom, please don't judge solely based on appearances. Lisa is a remarkable person inside and out, Jake defended, his voice firm yet gentle. I was hoping for someone with depth rather than superficial charm, she continued, her tone critical. I understand, but I imagined a more glamorous bride for you. And about the gift, I have a sweet tooth. A cake would have been preferable, she remarked, eyeing the cookies I had brought before placing them on the table. I apologize. I should have been more considerate, I replied with a slight tremor in my voice, feeling the tension ease as Jake guided me to sit beside him. Putting that aside, Mom, we've been considering taking the next step and getting married, Jake disclosed. Upon hearing this significant news, his mother sighed deeply and after a brief pause, responded, I figured it was about time, Jake. All right, I understand. Thank you so much. We truly appreciate your understanding. However, if you're going to live here, I'd like you to quit your job and help around the house. Wait, really? I was taken aback by her sudden demand, turning to Jake with surprise and concern. I've always wanted to maintain my career after marriage. I made sure to communicate this clearly to him in advance. I had envisioned a life just for the two of us. I understand, but if Mom says so, it's a wife's duty, right? Jake's unexpected statement left me shocked. Jake, I clearly communicated my desire to continue working even after we get married, right? Yeah, I remember that conversation, but I've been thinking it might be better if you didn't work after we get married. What's your reasoning? Well, I think it would be a bit complicated to work at the same company with my wife. Plus, I don't want people to think I can't support our household on my own income. As I listened to his words, I felt overwhelmed. But what about living together? Weren't we planning to start a new life together, just the two of us? I don't recall discussing that specifically. I've always lived with my parents, so I just assumed we'd naturally live with them. But my family home is quite far from here, isn't it? There's a 2-hour drive between my parents' home and your parents'. Leaving my mother was a significant concern for me. His words deeply surprised me. However, Jake remained firm in his beliefs and continued to passionately express his views. Lisa, why are you so shocked? In the tradition of marriage, women often leave their family homes to live with their husband's family. So the situation with your family really doesn't matter. From now on, my mother will become your new family. But in my heart, are you reconsidering the marriage itself? Your mother would be heartbroken. She's genuinely happy about our upcoming marriage. I felt that Jake's words contained an undeniable truth. Consequently, with a heavy heart, I decided to choose a life with him in his home. Giving up my career and distancing myself from my cherished family home was a painful decision. However, my mother respected my choice and offered warm words of encouragement. Lisa, marriage comes with its share of challenges, but building strong relationships with Jake and his mother is crucial. Amidst these challenges, never forget to make sincere efforts. Mom, thank you. I'll cherish your words and do my best. After our wedding, we moved to Jake's house to embark on our new life. On the first day, his mother greeted me with stern words. From now on, you'll be the heart of this house and will take on all household chores. I won't tolerate any negligence, so give it your all. Despite her years as a housewife, her expectations surpassed my assumptions. Despite my initial bewilderment, I resolved to tackle my new daily life sincerely. While my mother-in-law seemed more interested in the TV show and snacking than doing chores, I diligently cleaned the messy house, visible dust and dirt. Cleaning wasn't the only task. I also had to prepare dinner and handle the laundry. Soon, Jake returned from work, and as we sat down for dinner, my mother-in-law frowned and commented, "What's this? Doesn't this dish taste a bit bland?" I followed a cookbook and even tasted it myself to ensure the seasoning was right. Yet my mother-in-law candidly showed her discontent, pouring a lot of soy sauce over her dish. Even Jake added more soy sauce to his meal. I think the taste might be a bit bland, Lisa. You made this, right? Yes, I made it. How about learning more about the traditional flavors of my mom's dishes? As a full-time housewife, you might want to do that, right? Understood. I'll be careful." Seeing me like this, my mother-in-law seemed somewhat satisfied. Yet, her criticisms continued, pointing out even trivial things related to housework. For about a year, I led a tough life, constantly losing weight due to stress. Despite my mother's genuine happiness about my marriage, I couldn't easily suggest getting a divorce. Amidst such circumstances, my cell phone rang. "Hello, what, my mom?" The renowned hospital in my hometown informed me that my mother had suddenly fallen ill and was brought in. Her condition was serious, and they wanted me to come to the hospital immediately. At that moment, my mother-in-law was visiting her friend, and Jake was busy at work. I quickly messaged Jake about the situation, left a note for my mother-in-law, and hastily left the house. At the hospital, I learned that my mother had suffered a severe stroke. The doctors performed a successful operation, but there was a possibility she might need rehabilitation. Filled with shock and concern, I continued holding my mother's hand by her side. When her condition stabilized for a moment, I decided to temporarily return home. As I entered the house, my husband Jake and my mother-in-law were waiting, their expressions cold and accusatory. "Why is a stay-at-home wife leaving the house this much? Last night, Mom and I had no choice but to eat out." The read received on my message was definitely there. I couldn't believe that Jake, who should have fully grasped the situation, was indifferent to my mother's emergency. Naturally, I had no choice but to go to her regardless. As tears began to form in my eyes, I implored Jake and my mother-in-law. "Mom had a severe stroke. There's a chance she might be left with paralysis in her body or speech. She might need daily care." Seeming a bit shocked by the news, Jake responded, "That's concerning. So, how do you plan to deal with your mother's condition going forward?" I hadn't decided on the specifics yet, but if needed, I intend to fully care for my mother. "I'd appreciate it if you could understand that," I replied, my voice trembling with emotion. "I see. But do you really need to spend your time caring for an elderly person? Wouldn't it be better to just put her in an affordable facility?" Jake's words cut deep, disbelief coursing through me. "What? I can't believe what you're saying. She's my beloved mother. Please don't be so cold-hearted," I desperately retorted. Jake coldly let out a sarcastic snort. "Haven't I told you many times since you married into this family? What happens in your original home is no longer your concern. And if you're thinking about a facility, we won't contribute a dime. Don't expect any help from us," Jake retorted, his tone devoid of empathy. "Exactly," chimed in my mother-in-law, her words like daggers. "If that old woman were gone, things would be a bit easier for us." Rage swelled inside me, my heart heavy with hurt and anger. I could never forgive them for speaking ill of my mother, not just criticizing me, but showing such callousness towards her plight. I vowed never to forgive them for their attitude, no matter what happened. Renewing my determination to eventually retaliate against them, I stood there, unable to put my feelings into words. Silently, I left the room and hurried back to my own, where my love for Jake had already vanished, replaced by anger towards him and my mother-in-law. However, I knew I couldn't act rashly. My mother's health was still unstable, and I needed to carefully plan my next steps. Under the harsh scrutiny of my mother-in-law and husband, I continued visiting my mother at the hospital. Surprisingly, her surgery went smoother than expected, and it turned out her paralysis was very mild. After about half a year of hospitalization and rehabilitation, the doctors declared that my mother could live at home again. "Lisa, I'm sorry for causing you so much worry because of me. Did I cause any trouble for Jake or your mother-in-law?" Despite her own difficult situation, my mother was genuinely concerned about how I was adapting to life in my in-laws' house. Her compassion touched my heart, filling it with both pain and gratitude. Unable to express my thanks in words, I just smiled and squeezed her hand tightly. Meanwhile, the situation in my in-laws' house was different. My mother, father-in-law, and my husband started blaming me for using my mother's condition as a shield, accusing me of neglecting my duties at home because I was too concerned about my own family. My mother-in-law with a sharp gaze, said, "What are you thinking, neglecting your duties in our house because you're worried about your mother?" Despite my best efforts to fulfill my domestic responsibilities, I found myself under such accusations. In the midst of this blame game, Jake also raised his voice against me. "Honestly, Mom, I didn't think through this marriage well enough back then. I never thought it would become this difficult." My mother-in-law responded with a tilt of her head, saying, "If we had known, I would have opposed the marriage from the start." Jake, with a somewhat downcast expression, said, "I'm really sorry, Mom. I'll think more carefully and act responsibly from now on." Angrily, my mother-in-law shot back, "It's all her fault. None of this would have happened if she had just properly done her housework." Even as I heard their words, I pretended to feel nothing and continued with my chores. Day by day, I gradually spoke less at home, acting like a machine just going through the motions of housework. Nevertheless, they continued to criticize me even more harshly. Meanwhile, I secretly recorded their harsh words. Using my free time, I also continued to study and acquire qualifications for the future. I was preparing for a future where, even if I ended up separating from Jake, I would be able to live on my own. Despite my daily chores, I did not neglect my efforts towards further growth and qualification acquisition, even if it meant cutting down on my sleep. About a year after my mother's health deteriorated, while I was folding laundry at home, my cell phone rang. "Hello, is this Mrs. Jake Foster's wife? This is from his workplace." The content of the call was an unexpected event. Jake had been in a traffic accident while commuting during work, and he was immediately taken to a nearby hospital. I calmly accepted the news and specifically conveyed the information to my mother-in-law, who reacted with a panicked expression. "We need to hurry. I will go ahead to the hospital. You should organize the necessary things for the transfer and hospital stay and then follow later." Mother-in-law hastily left the house. I quietly watched her leave and then decided to first complete the administrative procedures I had planned to do at the city office. After returning home from the city office, I spent a long time alone in my room, savoring the silence I hadn't felt in a long time. The morning came, and as the light of a new day streamed through the windows, I slowly woke up. I readied myself and made my way to the hospital where Jake had been admitted. As I slowly opened the door to his hospital room, my mother-in-law, who was waiting, showered me with words of indignation. "What were you doing? You finally came at this time, and while Jake is in such a condition," she exclaimed. Taking a deep breath, I approached Jake's bed. He weakly opened his eyes and seemed to recognize me. Jake had suffered major damage to his spine from the traffic accident. Right now, he was unable to move his lower body. The hospital room was quiet, and only the sunlight streaming in from the window brought a sense of warmth. My mother-in-law stood next to Jake's bed, her eyes filled with tears as she worriedly looked at him. Jake began to speak to me in a weak voice. "I understand that my current situation is tough, but I want to get back to our everyday life at home, Lisa. I think I'm going to need your support for the life ahead." I couldn't meet Jake's pleading gaze and instead formed a light smile as I took out a piece of paper from my bag. It was a divorce paper I had received from the city office yesterday afternoon. My part was already properly signed and stamped. "Jake, I want you to sign this divorce paper," I said calmly. "What? What are you talking about, Lisa?" The color drained from my husband's and mother-in-law's faces at these astonishing words. I took a deep breath and continued speaking calmly. "I haven't forgotten the time you told my frail mother to go to a facility. Why should I take care of you when you can say something like that? Maybe you should consider a facility too. It would be less of a financial burden." "Lisa, are you really saying this?" There was surprise and confusion in my mother-in-law's voice, and at that moment, I could feel how much she was hurting. Maintaining my calm demeanor, I slowly slid the papers toward Jake. "You can fill out these papers once you're feeling better. I will be leaving this house today, so from now on, you and your mom will need to support each other, just the two of you." "Is this a joke, Lisa? Are you serious? Are you really going to abandon me in this state?" Despite his frustrated voice, I maintained my resolve and replied, "Who was it that ignored and neglected my precious mother a year ago? I can't believe you've forgotten. I wonder who would help people like you. Actions always come back to you. I really hope you too receive what you deserve. Just accept your punishment and go straight to hell, you worthless beings." Leaving Jake and my mother-in-law stunned in disbelief behind, I quickly left the place. Hours later, before my mother-in-law returned home, I packed up all my belongings and returned to my childhood home. I had informed my mother about what happened beforehand, so she welcomed me with a warm and gentle expression. As a result, Jake and I had no room for reconciliation, and after a messy divorce process, our divorce was officially finalized. Having firmly recorded Jake's and his mother's inappropriate remarks played a big part, and I was able to receive a satisfactory division of assets. Afterward, it seems Jake returned to his home. I've heard rumors that his mother has taken over his care. Although he got some insurance money, working like before is difficult for him, and it seems he ultimately had to retire. He's now shut himself in at home, and it appears his mother is supporting him through his reckless days. She, influenced by the long-giving life, has also aged considerably. When I heard all this information, I didn't feel a bit of sympathy. I truly wish them what they deserve. As for me, I've started living together with my mother again and have re-entered the workforce after studying for certifications. I was able to successfully change jobs to a workplace with almost the same conditions as my previous company. Fortunately, my mother's health has been steadily recovering, and recently, I can see her passionately engaging in her favorite hobbies. Seeing that, I feel truly relieved. Moving forward as we live together, I strongly feel that we should support each other while I give my all at work, building a bright future together.
"Guess what it's like to travel abroad with my husband's money," my sister-in-law Betty boasted. "I wonder how it feels to rely not only on your parents but also on your brother," she added, sounding a bit rude. I felt really angry at her boldness. "Well, you're not any better. You stay at home all day but still hire a maid and don't do any chores," I snapped back. "That's enough, both of you stop it," my father interrupted as our argument started to get out of hand. He calmed me down with a gentle look and then turned to Betty. "It seems like you both can't enjoy your trip with us here. We'll head back home. Sorry for disturbing," he said politely. "My name is Lisa. I'm almost 40 years old and I work while living with my father. My mom passed away from an illness 10 years ago, and my younger brother Jake, who is 5 years younger than me, has already gotten married and moved out. I live simply with my father in our bay house. It's not that I can't afford to live on my own. I choose to live with my father because I worry about him. After my mom died, he started having a lot of health problems and had to stop working as he got closer to retirement age. His health got worse to the point where he wouldn't eat for days unless reminded and would be stuck in bed for almost 2 weeks if he got sick. I couldn't leave my dad alone in that condition. At that time, my brother Jake was already working as a lawyer and was engaged to be married. Jake and his fiancée were planning to build a new home near ours, so it was obvious that I would continue living with my father. Jake is very talented compared to me. I never expected his wife to be so difficult. Jake's wife, Betty, stopped working as soon as they got married and became a homemaker. She doesn't do any chores herself and relies on a hired butler. Her days mostly involve fancy lunches and shopping at expensive stores. Jake is busy with his job, so he might not have much time to spend with Betty, but her extravagant lifestyle is surprising. Living near Jake and Betty's house, I couldn't help but hear about Betty's carefree life. What made it worse were her comments when she visited us. "When are you going to move out, Lisa? Aren't you embarrassed to still live at home at your age?" She teased me. I often bit my tongue and just smiled vaguely, not wanting to hear such words from a woman who doesn't do any housework and just enjoys herself. I wish she wouldn't come over at all, I thought to myself. But my father felt sorry for Betty, thinking Jake might be too busy and she might feel lonely. He didn't push her away. Instead, he often invited her to have dinner with us. I wish Jake and my father could understand how much Betty's behavior was affecting me emotionally. But when I saw my father, unaffected by Betty's bold attitude, happily eating dinner with her, I couldn't help but feel like as long as he was happy, that was all that mattered. Why did Jake marry someone like her? I often wondered about it, but I figured there must be qualities in Betty that only Jake could appreciate. I chose to ignore Betty's rude comments and quietly continued eating. That day, like usual, my father invited Betty to join us for dinner. Jake had been really busy with work lately, and Betty usually just helped herself to food prepared by the housekeeper. Maybe feeling sorry for Betty, my father decided to buy some fancy ingredients and suggested that the three of us have a nice meal together. I wasn't very excited about it, but since my father insisted, I didn't have much of a choice. I went to the supermarket in town and bought some ingredients, then managed to make some dishes I'd never tried before. My father, who hadn't been eating much lately, was really happy and joked, saying, "I'm extra hungry today." Betty showed up quite a bit later than we agreed and plopped down in a dining chair without even saying hello properly. The dishes I'd made were all laid out in front of her. "Now that we're all here, let's dig in," my father said cheerfully, but Betty didn't seem happy. She pushed the food around with her fork, let out a big sigh, and said, "Do you really expect me to eat something that looks this unappetizing?" Betty shot me a disdainful look as she glanced at the dishes. I stared back at her, then turned to my father in surprise. He also seemed taken aback, his mouth hanging open as he looked at Betty. "Well, it might not be as fancy as what your housekeeper prepares, but Lisa made all of this herself. Can't you show a bit more respect?" My father responded sternly. Betty immediately frowned. "I never said I wanted to eat with you guys. I'm just trying to create some memories here, and you serve me something that looks so unappealing. Can't you think about how I feel?" "What do you mean by making memories?" I muttered under my breath, but Betty caught on quickly. She looked down at me and my father, smirked, and said something shocking. "Well, your father won't be around for much longer, will he? I'm the devoted daughter-in-law keeping him company." So, I was expecting a sizable inheritance. At that moment, both my father and I were stunned into silence. The room fell quiet. Could this really be the woman that the smart Jake chose to marry? Talking about inheritance before someone has even passed away. There's something really wrong with that. "You're going to live for many more years." Before I knew it, I was shouting. Even Betty, who had been grumpily playing with her food, stopped when she saw me venting my anger. "Don't talk about inheritance to my dad. He might just be another person to you, but he's family to me. He's also family to Jake. He's the only living relative left for us after we lost our mother." My father gently restrained me as I leaned over the table, breathing heavily. I slowly sat back down, my anger toward Betty still burning inside. With a deep breath that seemed to break the tension, I felt my pent-up emotions deflate. "I'll pretend I didn't hear what you just said," my father said in a calm voice. Immediately, Betty scoffed. "All I did was speak the truth. I don't want the inheritance to go to a woman who's still living with her parents." Betty's words were blunt. I didn't have the energy to be angry anymore. She boldly brought up what my father had tried to ignore and hurled her insulting words and actions at us. "I'll leave this old house to you, sister-in-law. Looks like you won't have to worry about losing your place to live," Betty said with a mocking laugh. I wanted to argue back, but when I saw my father quietly shaking his head, I held my tongue. My father was too forgiving with Betty. Even as she feels lonely because Jake is often busy with work, it's not right to excuse an adult who doesn't know how to speak respectfully. My father glanced at my expression and murmured softly, "She's the one Jake picked." There was a sad smile on my father's face. He looked like a dad dealing with a troublesome daughter and also like a man who's been worn down by life. I couldn't bring myself to say anything when I saw my father's expression. I had words for both my father and Betty, but more than anything, I wanted to know what Jake thought about all of this. It's uncertain if Jake knows about Betty's behavior. If he's aware of it and ignoring it, then I feel obligated to speak up as his sister. In the end, Betty hardly ate the food I cooked and left early after a short conversation. Only my father and I remained in this spacious living room. Making memories, huh? Maybe she's onto something, I sighed quietly, noticing my father's figure suddenly appearing smaller as he muttered those words. Following Jake's suggestion, our family decided to take a trip to France. My father wanted to visit France while he could still walk without assistance, so Jake and I organized the trip. Initially, I suggested to Jake that he and Dad go on the trip alone without me, since Betty often made snide remarks toward me. I didn't want to spoil the happy atmosphere of the trip. However, Jake insisted that it would be better to have someone who usually observes Dad's condition, so he ended up buying 4 tickets. I reluctantly agreed to join them on the trip to France, and as I anticipated, Betty was in a sour mood the entire time, not speaking a word to anyone on the plane. Once we arrived, we headed straight to the heart of Paris and enjoyed sightseeing. My father was surprisingly lively, exploring every corner with enthusiasm. Betty seemed to brighten up a bit when Jake bought her a designer bag. She walked arm in arm with Jake, but I couldn't help but notice that Jake didn't seem particularly happy at that moment. I accidentally locked eyes with Betty, and she glared at me so intensely that my heart skipped a beat. By the way, why is Lisa even here with us? Betty let go of Jake's arm and confronted me. I asked her to come just in case something happens to Dad. We need someone who can handle it. Jake tried to intervene, but it seemed like his words didn't register with Betty. She continued to stare at me, smirking. Betty spoke in a mean way, asking what it's like to use her husband's money to travel abroad. She said not to spend too much because plane tickets are expensive. Then she rudely suggested that Lisa could sleep outside instead of in their fancy hotel suite. Jake tried to stop her, but she didn't listen. Betty insulted Lisa, saying she lives off her family's money, including her brother's. Lisa felt really angry and upset at this. She fired back, saying Betty actually lives off Jake's money even though she's a housewife. Lisa pointed out that Betty hires someone else to do the housework. Their dad stepped in before things got worse. He calmly told Betty they'd leave because their presence was ruining her trip. He apologized to Lisa and asked her to check the bus schedule to the airport. Betty looked pleased, but Jake seemed worried. Jake suddenly realized that they would be left without anyone to help them once their parents left. He desperately tried to stop them from leaving, but their dad remained firm in his decision. He asked Lisa to check the bus schedule to the airport and promptly headed in that direction. Lisa had to follow her dad while keeping an eye on her brother and his wife. As they walked away, Jake shouted that they would be fine without their parents, disrespectfully calling them old man and old lady. Lisa felt upset at Betty for calling their dad old, but she didn't dwell on it. She hurried after her dad, listening to Jake's distressed cries and Betty's insults directed at him. Eventually, Jake burst into the cafe near the airport where they were having tea, looking frantic and sweaty. He rushed to their table and bowed his head in a flurry of panic. "I'm really sorry for what happened earlier. I'll make a proper apology later, but right now, I need your help with Betty," Jake said earnestly, bowing deeply. Dad and I exchanged surprised looks. "What happened to Betty?" I asked on behalf of Dad, prompting Jake to explain what happened after we left. Jake and Betty took a taxi to the hotel after we left on the bus to the airport. However, they encountered a problem once they were in the taxi. They couldn't communicate well with the driver because neither of them spoke French, and the driver didn't speak English. Despite the driver asking them something, they couldn't understand and ended up getting out of the taxi without realizing Betty was still inside. Jake expressed concern that he couldn't reach Betty on the phone and worried she might have been mugged or faced some other trouble after being left by the taxi. Realizing he needed help and feeling overwhelmed by the situation due to his lack of understanding of French, Jake turned to us for assistance. I reassured him that both my father and I are fluent in French. Despite Betty thinking of my father as incapable due to his age, he used to be a French teacher and I currently teach French. This trip to France was planned by Jake as a way for my father to reminisce about his youth. Upon arriving in France, my father seemed revitalized by memories of his time studying abroad. Since I also had experience studying in France during my student days, after parting ways with my brother and his wife, we shared stories about our time in France. My father listened intently, eventually nodding in understanding. "Let's head back to the city center. I'm guessing the taxi that dropped you off might be waiting for its next passenger there," my father suggested. Following my father's advice, we swiftly prepared ourselves and embarked on a mission to locate Betty, who had been left behind somewhere. My father and I decided to split up and search for the taxi that had dropped off my brother and his wife when they returned to the city center. It's common for taxi drivers in the area to speak French fluently without needing to use English. Before I could reach them, my father managed to find the taxi that had taken Jake and Betty, leading us to the spot where Betty was supposed to have been dropped off. Thankfully, Betty was there, safe but looking weary. However, upon her arrival, it became evident that she had been robbed. All her bags and belongings were missing, leaving her with nothing. When Betty spotted Jake's face, tears started to form in her eyes, but she quickly put on a frown upon seeing us. "Why are they here, Betty?" Jake asked, clearly annoyed, and let out a heavy sigh. "If it wasn't for them, you'd have been stranded here with nothing, Betty. You should be thankful," Jake scolded her. Betty looked uncertain. "What do you mean?" "Without them, our trip would have been a mess. We can't speak French, so that's why we're in this situation. But they're different. They're both French teachers, much better at it than I am," Jake clarified. Betty seemed uneasy, glancing over at us. A troubling thought crossed my mind, and I quietly told Betty, "If we hadn't found you, you might have had to sleep on the streets here." Betty clenched her lip in frustration, and besides, Jake and I split the expenses for the trip equally. "So how can you say it's all funded by an old lady living off her parents' money?" With that, Betty began to tremble. "It's your father's money anyway, right?" In response to Betty's argument, my father gently shook his head. "I didn't do anything, Lisa. Jake and Betty are doing well on their own. They're my pride and joy." Just as I felt Betty's glare bore into me, she fell silent, refusing to say a single word of thanks despite being helped. I had a lot I wanted to say to her, but my father's whispered advice to take it easy made me restrain myself and stay quiet. This must have been a very embarrassing moment for Betty. She probably never expected to be rescued by someone she had looked down upon. Even Jake seemed tired of Betty's stubborn hostility towards us, his frustration evident on his face. "Well, now that everything's sorted out, shall we continue our sightseeing? Let's go to a restaurant I used to love when I was studying here," my father suggested cheerfully. With my father's optimistic suggestion, our family was united once again. We had a fantastic time in France, ignoring Betty's gloominess and fully enjoying our trip. When we returned to the States, Jake kept apologizing to us and surprisingly decided to divorce Betty. I was shocked and asked him why they had married in the first place. It turned out Betty had lied about being pregnant and pressured Jake into marrying her. After they got married, it became clear that she wasn't pregnant at all. Jake had hesitated to divorce her earlier because of his public image, but he couldn't tolerate Betty's disrespect towards my father and me anymore. After the divorce, Betty was forced out of their home and couldn't continue living as a housewife. Without a maid to help with household chores, she faced difficulties. Additionally, she lost half of her assets due to a pickpocket incident during our trip to France. She must be working hard now to make ends meet. Meanwhile, my father became noticeably happier and more lively, reminiscing about his youth in France during our trip. I decided to quit my teaching job and started a French language school at home. I hope to renovate it soon and have my father join me as a French teacher. Our family's dreams are growing, and we're excited about the future.
People like you, with no job and a limited education, are not welcome in this household. With those words, my mother-in-law poured scalding water on me. "It's hot, please stop." I involuntarily screamed, shocked by her bizarre behavior. Pouring boiling water on anyone is inexcusable. Fortunately, I suffered no burns, but it could have been a disaster. I couldn't believe my mother-in-law would resort to such extremes. Moreover, it wasn't me but my husband who was unemployed. A growing anger towards my mother-in-law's attitude surged within me. Enough is enough. If she's gone this far, I'll do as she wishes. Understood. If you insist, I have no choice. I'll leave this house, I declared. Finally, you're leaving. That makes things easier for me. My mother-in-law expressed joy, far from being remorseful. I no longer wanted to stay in such a hostile environment. I promptly packed my things and returned to my parents' home. My mother-in-law didn't know that my husband, Raffle, was unemployed or that I had been supporting the household finances. In fact, since quitting my job, I had started trading stocks and was earning about $30,000 a month. Even if I was driven out of her house, I could still live on my own without any issues. I wouldn't have any qualms being on my own. Even if she came to me in tears, struggling with living expenses, I would never lend a hand. She should regret kicking me out like this. I had married Raphael about 2 years ago. We were from the same university and had been dating since then. Both of us, graduates of the economics department, aspired to work in finance and managed to secure jobs at different brokerage companies after graduation. Despite our busy days, we maintained our relationship. 3 years later, Raphael proposed. "Julia, I will definitely make you happy. Marry me." Believing that I could be happy with Raphael, I accepted. Yes, I'm looking forward to it. We decided to get married, thinking we could build a happy family together. However, Raphael then dropped an unexpected bomb. "Hey Julia, would you quit your job and live with me at my parents' house?" "What? I don't mind quitting my job, but we're newlyweds. I'd like to live with just the two of us. I'm just worried about leaving my mother alone. I'll make sure it won't be a burden to you." Raphael's father had passed away when he was in middle school, and since then, he had lived with his mother. Being an only child, Raphael was concerned about her. Understanding his feelings, I agreed. "Okay, I'll live with you." 2 weeks later, we moved into Raphael's family home. My mother-in-law, now able to live with Raphael, initially greeted us with a pleased expression. However, as soon as she looked at me, her expression clouded. She stared at me coldly, making it painfully clear that I was not welcomed. "It doesn't matter. You didn't have to come here." What did I mishear? I thought I heard my mother-in-law muttering something under her breath, but I couldn't make it out clearly. I smiled and brushed it off. At this point, I began to feel a bit anxious about living with her. However, the day passed without any particular issues. The next morning, I woke up to the sound of my mother-in-law yelling at me. "Are you still sleeping? Hurry up and prepare breakfast." When I looked at the clock by my bed, it was still before dawn, around 4:00 a.m., and it was still dark outside. I was surprised that she would demand breakfast so early. Why so early? "Don't just laze around because you're not working." My mother-in-law scolded me, still groggy from sleep. I thought it was way too early in the morning, but I couldn't argue back and started preparing breakfast. Even while preparing breakfast, my mother-in-law kept berating me. "Hurry up! Why does it take you so long? You're so slow." After 30 minutes, breakfast was finally ready. "I'm sorry for making you wait. You finally finished. Can't you make it faster?" My mother-in-law complained again. I wanted to retort that it was physically impossible to do it any faster, but I just smiled and shrugged it off. "What is this? This soup is too salty. What is it?" "I don't think it's that salty. What are you saying? There's something wrong with my taste? Are you trying to kill me quickly by feeding me such salty meals? I never thought or intended such a thing. What is she talking about, and why is she so harsh on me?" Curious, I mustered the courage to ask my mother-in-law. "Why are you so harsh on me?" "What are you talking about? I don't think I'm being harsh. Or are you trying to make me the bad guy?" "No, that's not what I mean." I was overwhelmed by my mother-in-law's pressure and couldn't talk back. Finish eating. Start cleaning. After that, there's laundry to do, so there's no time to rest. Since then, every day, I was continually harassed by my mother-in-law, wearing me down both mentally and physically. While I was cleaning, she would say things like, "You missed the dust in the corner." When I was doing laundry, she'd complain, "There's still a stain." A month after starting to live with her, I felt like I was going to break. So I talked to Raphael about it. "It's about your mother. She's been saying mean things to me every day, and it's hard. Could you please tell her not to say such things?" But Raphael showed no reaction. I was momentarily irritated by Raphael's lack of response. But then I noticed something strange about him. He was pale, as if he had something important to say. "What's wrong? Did something happen?" When I asked, Raphael hesitantly began to speak. "Actually, I've been fired from the company." "What is this? Some kind of joke?" I was speechless, unable to comprehend. There was a downsizing at the company, and I got laid off, according to Raphael. Due to recent economic downturns, The company's profits had plummeted, leading to unavoidable large-scale layoffs. So you'll be unemployed from tomorrow. Well, I can work for 1 more month after receiving the notice of dismissal. But after that, fortunately, I had been using my knowledge from my time at the securities company to trade stocks. Although I struggled at first, I was now earning about $30,000 a month, so we weren't struggling financially. I was comforting Raphael and had forgotten about all the harassment from my mother-in-law. From the next day onwards, I endured my mother-in-law's harsh treatments as Raphael lost his job. Feeling the need to be strong and support him, I continued to endure the situation. A month passed, and Raphael was officially laid off and became unemployed. He started looking for a job initially, but gradually he began to spend most of his time at home, making excuses. "Shouldn't you start looking for a job more seriously?" I suggested. "Yeah, I'm looking, but it's hard to find a good company that will suit me," Raphael replied, seemingly having no intention of actively seeking new employment. Reluctantly, I continued to support our household. As time passed, the harassment from my mother-in-law intensified, and I grew increasingly exhausted. Initially, I thought I had to endure it because Raphael was unemployed, but I no longer felt that way. I spent my days feeling listless. One day, Raphael unusually went out in the morning. Perhaps he had finally started to seriously look for a job. After seeing him off, I started cleaning as usual. "Make sure it's clean. Do it properly." My mother-in-law sipped coffee on the living room sofa, hurling sarcasm at me. Fed up, I ignored her. Suddenly, she threw a tantrum and yelled at me. "How dare you ignore me? You're just a mere daughter-in-law. You don't even have a job." Ignoring her, I continued cleaning. She grew angrier and confronted me. "Still ignoring me? Unemployed and uneducated people like you should leave this house." She yelled and then poured boiling water on me, the hot water she had prepared for her coffee. "It's hot, please stop." I screamed involuntarily at her sudden action. Thankfully, the water wasn't super boiling hot, so I didn't suffer any burns, but it could have been a disaster. Finally reacting, she said, "This is what I've been saying. If you're not working, leave this house." She smirked as she spoke. Fed up with her behavior, I had no choice but to agree to her demand. "All right, I'll leave." "Good. That makes things easier. Leave quickly." I quickly packed my things and decided to leave that day. I no longer wanted to spend another second in that house. I left, heading straight to my parents' home. Upon arrival, my parents were surprised by the sudden visit, but welcomed me warmly. I waited for a call from Raphael, but there was neither a phone call nor a message. Feeling a bit lonely, I decided not to contact him until he reached out. A month passed since I returned to my parents' house, but there was still no contact from Raphael. My feelings for him faded, and I started considering divorce. One early morning, the doorbell at my parents' house rang. On the monitor, I saw, to my surprise, Raphael and my mother-in-law. "What now, after all this time?" I thought. "Yes, what can I do for you?" "I've forgiven you. Now come back home quickly," she yelled through the intercom as usual. Forgiving me? What's she talking about? I appreciated her words, but I hadn't done anything that required forgiveness from her. After telling her that, I ended the intercom call, boiling with anger at my mother-in-law's attitude. However, they were persistent, banging on the front door violently. "Don't just hang up on me. Come on, let's go back," my mother-in-law yelled. Considering the noise they were making could become a hassle to the neighborhood, I reluctantly opened the door, inviting my mother-in-law and Raphael inside after seating them on the sofa in the living room. I inquired about their unexpected visit, wondering why they were both there all of a sudden. It was my mother-in-law who had insisted that I leave, and now she was telling me to come back. The situation was perplexing, and I couldn't make any sense of it. "You're the one who told me to leave. There's no way I can go back now," I asserted. My mother-in-law responded with frustration. accusing me of childish behavior and claiming to have forgiven me. She insisted that I return and stay in her house, even stating that she'd let me, an unemployed and uneducated person, stay there. But I'm not the unemployed one, it's Raphael. And if I go back, they'll take advantage of me every day. I might not be working, but what about your son, huh? I retorted. Raphael seemed surprised at this revelation. My mother-in-law appeared confused, indicating that Raphael hadn't informed her about his layoff. Pressed further, Raphael finally admitted to being laid off from the company. Apologies and explanations ensued, with Raphael justifying his actions by relying on my income for financial stability. My mother-in-law, shocked at the news, openly expressed anger toward Raphael for not finding a job yet. "Why did you keep quiet about this? What are we going to do now?" she scolded him. Raphael assured her that my income would suffice for the time being, causing my mother-in-law to label him as worthless for not actively seeking employment. Fed up with Raphael's excuses, I couldn't believe that I had ever thought of supporting him. When my mother-in-law suggested I come back, I vehemently rejected the idea, considering all the mistreatment I had endured. Their unexpected visit had turned into a heated argument, revealing the truth about my mother-in-law pouring boiling water on me. Raphael was shocked to learn about this incident and confronted his mother. "Why did you do that?" he asked her. She admitted to the act, attributing it to my ignoring her. The revelation sparked a heated exchange between Raphael and his mother, prompting me to intervene and urge them to take their arguments home. Realizing the impact of their loud arguments on someone else's house, my words prompted a change in their attitudes. Previously assertive and bold, they now pleaded with me to come back, promising that they wouldn't cause any harm again. Despite their pleas, I saw through their intentions. Raphael's promise to find a job seemed insincere, and my mother-in-law's assurance not to cause trouble appeared dubious. I voiced my skepticism, stating that their words were pointless and that they would only take advantage of me. Their silence confirmed my suspicions, and I left them in the living room, heading to my room, leaving them to contemplate their actions. When I returned to the living room 5 minutes later, they were still sitting in silence with their heads down. Frustrated by the prolonged silence, I questioned, "How long do you plan to stay quiet? It doesn't matter to me anymore." Instead of a response, Raphael signed something. I had handed him a pre-filled divorce form with my name on it. Surprised by the document, Raphael looked utterly confused. I bluntly explained, "Can't you see it's a divorce form? I'm done with someone who won't find a job and didn't even contact me after I went back to my parents' house." "Do wait, please. This is too sudden," Raphael protested. I found his stubbornness irritating, as he seemed oblivious to the fact that his actions were the root cause of our problems. Unmoved, I affirmed, "I've made up my mind. My decision to divorce you won't change, no matter what you say." Raphael, still in disbelief, questioned if divorce was too harsh. Coldly, I responded, "I don't think so. It's your fault." I directed the same coldness toward my mother-in-law, who was partly to blame. Resigned to the situation, Raphael signed the divorce form, warning me not to regret it. However, I felt a sense of relief, and I asserted that the one who might regret it was Raphael. "I'll submit the divorce form. I don't want any compensation. Just go home," I declared, finalizing my divorce from Raphael. Though it may have seemed harsh, it was necessary to escape the harassment from my mother-in-law and Raphael's unemployment. 2 weeks later, while relaxing at my parents' house, I received a call from my ex-mother-in-law. She informed me that the electricity and gas had been cut off and questioned if I had done something. I explained that I had stopped paying for Raphael and her living expenses. Hoping for my assistance, she asked if I could cover it just for the month. I found her request absurd, considering we were no longer a couple and didn't live together. I firmly declined, suggesting she ask Raphael for help, as he had promised to find a job. Unable to comprehend my refusal, she pleaded for help, playing the ex-wife card. However, I remained firm, ending the call and blocking her number. Finally, I severed ties with both my ex-mother-in-law who constantly harassed me, and Raffle, who had proven to be unreliable. Life at my parents' house became peaceful, and I focused on rebuilding my life. Months later, while checking stock charts on a holiday, I received a message from Raffle. He apologized for everything, acknowledging his reliance on me and the recent job at a factory. Despite the apology, I had no intention of getting involved with them again. Raffle mentioned his mother's continued harshness and expressed a desire for me to come back. Reading the message, I believed reconciliation was unlikely. I blocked Raffle's number. 6 months after the divorce, I started dating a man introduced by a friend. He was reliable, treated me well, and despite the age difference, we connected. While marriage was not on the immediate horizon, I cherished the happy times we spent together, focusing on the present and leaving the past behind. Hey, aren't you going to contribute more around the house? If you're going to be that kind of wife, maybe you should just leave. I sat there, stunned by my mother-in-law's harsh words. Her cold, intense gaze bore into me. Francisco has us, and we don't need you anymore. You always look tired and seem to accomplish nothing, chimed in my unhelpful sister-in-law with a dismissive tone. This is too much, Francisco. Don't you think your mother and sister are going overboard? I pleaded. I'm doing my best too. When I sought help from my husband, he responded with a demeaning attitude. I agree with my mother and sister, Francisco interjected. I'm busy with work, and it's becoming a problem if you don't help with the chores. Besides, my relationship with the new part-time girl is progressing, and you're just baggage. Can you quickly pack and live somewhere else? Shocked by Francisco's words, I glanced at the three of them. They all seemed to blame me. A surge of rage welled up in my chest. I took a deep breath, calmed myself, and said, I understand. I need some time. My in-laws, who had once relied on me, were now falling apart. My name is Michelle, and I'm 32 years old. I work diligently, both at my job and in household chores. While it's not uncommon for women to continue working after marriage, I truly love my job and strive to succeed in the company I joined right after college. One morning, as I was getting ready for work, my husband, Francisco, approached with a pleading look. Michelle, can you take care of this? He handed me a file crammed with receipts and bills. You should manage the cafe's finances properly. I smiled and responded, sorry, but I'm really bad at that. I met Francisco while he was working part-time at a cafe I frequented. After a few chats, we began dating and eventually talked about marriage. Now, Francisco owns the cafe, but despite his ability to run the business, he struggles with paperwork and always asks me to handle the accounting. As I sighed, my mother-in-law added, Michelle, I suddenly feel like eating Chinese food tonight. Could you rinse the rice well? Also, Mia and the kids are coming this weekend, so we need to plan their meals. Sure, I got it. I nodded to my mother-in-law's request and hurriedly left the house. Before marriage, I was excited about my new life with Francisco. However, he suggested, my mom's lonely by herself. Why don't we all live together in our big house? So now I reside with his mother. To put it lightly, she's not proficient in household chores. When we moved in, the house was a bit of a mess. After my father-in-law passed away, she started living on a pension, which she mostly spends on dining out or ordering food. Francisco seems to believe that housework is a woman's job, making it my full responsibility. Francisco's sister, Nia, occasionally brings her kids home, and each time she does, my to-do list grows. I can't help but think that yet another chaotic weekend is approaching. Weekends, which should be precious times for recovering from the usual exhaustion, turn into moments where my sister-in-law's children ask to play or complain about being hungry. I find myself not only preparing meals in the kitchen, but also entertaining the children. Then, my sister-in-law drops a bombshell. Michelle, I'm getting divorced and we'll be moving back here with the kids next month. I'm surprised, and for a moment, I'm lost for words. Really? Do you have something to say? She asks. No, I was just thinking. It must have been hard. When are you moving? I want to move as soon as possible. Surprised that my sister-in-law and her children will be moving in, I hope that maybe she will help, and household chores will become more manageable. While we had a normal relationship, I anticipate that this change might bring us closer and result in her contributing to the chores. Despite my positive attitude, reality has other plans. Perhaps because she grew up with my mother-in-law, my sister-in-law appears to live a life devoid of housework. She spends most of her time lounging on the sofa, watching TV, and always has some snack with her. Observing her, I realize her neglect of housework might have contributed to her divorce. Now, with the added responsibility of preparing meals for her children and making lunches for kindergarten, my workload increases, and my free time diminishes. I had hoped for her assistance, but it's disappointing that it turns out to be a swing and a miss. Then, there comes a time when my work at the company suddenly becomes hectic. Every day, I start work early, do overtime, and return home exhausted to find the room overflowing with things, with no space to even walk. Seeing this scene each day, waves of fatigue wash over me. On top of that, my mother-in-law and sister-in-law complain, asking if dinner is ready yet or why I'm home so late. When I struggle to manage household chores, they coldly remark, "Michelle, there's a mountain of laundry waiting. Don't slack off just because you're busy." I internally protest, "Mother-in-law, I'm really trying my best." But before my sister-in-law can say anything, I frequently opted to keep my thoughts to myself. "Michelle, are you standing up to your mother-in-law? That's a bit bold. But for the sake of the children, please try a little harder to make homemade meals," suggested my sister-in-law. I couldn't help but respond, "If you have so much free time at home, why don't you help out once in a while?" While doing household chores, I overheard Francisco's sister saying, "Haha, Francisco owns a store, so Michelle doesn't need to work, right? If that's the case, maybe you should try a little harder at home." Behind their words, I felt the mounting pressure that I should be doing more. That night, at the peak of my stress, I decided to speak my mind to Francisco. "I've been so busy lately, and neither your mother nor your sister is helping out with household chores. It's really hard." "Michelle, you're not speaking ill of our family, are you?" Francisco's eyes sharpened a bit, and I braced myself. "That's not what I mean, but it's hard for me to do everything by myself. If you helped out once in a while, things would be a little easier for me. I'm busy managing the store. It's different from a regular job. Housework is the wife's responsibility, right?" Even though disappointed by his response, I sat and pondered. A good idea suddenly popped into my head, and I silently pumped my fist. I immediately grabbed my smartphone, opened my favorite online shop, and started adding necessary items to the cart. After completing the purchase, I went to bed satisfied. A few days later, my new electronic household appliances, which would become my lifelines, were delivered to our home. The latest washing machine, a cleaning robot that reaches every corner of the room, and a rice cooker that cooks delicious rice without much effort. Each of them was a savior, making my daily life just a little bit easier and more enjoyable. While setting up the new washing machine, my mother-in-law and sister-in-law suddenly appeared with surprised expressions. "Wait, Michelle, you got such a fancy washing machine, but the old one was still good, wasn't it?" Smiling gently, I replied, "The old one took a bit too long, and I heard this new one shortens the laundry time." Their gaze then shifted to the cleaning robot and the new kitchen appliances. "See, I've also upgraded these," I said, showing them off a bit. "All these things, cleaning robots and convenient cooking appliances." "Michelle, come over here for a moment," my mother-in-law said inside the room. Seeing the slightly surprised expressions of my mother-in-law and sister-in-law, I smirked to myself. Francisco sat next to me, and the four of us began our discussion. "Why did you buy so many things?" My mother-in-law raised her voice. Do you really need all these new appliances? Isn't it just because you want to make things a bit easier? She continued. Well, I thought it would be nice if things around the house could run a bit more smoothly, I replied with a slightly troubled expression. But my mother-in-law chimed in. Relying too much on machines, aren't we? The sister-in-law waved her hand, but I responded. The appliances we had can still be used. Francisco is working hard managing his store. Maybe you should be more frugal. Francisco nodded in agreement with his sister, and in a quiet voice, I murmured, Maybe you're right. There was a hint of anger in my mother-in-law's eyes, and I stumbled over my words. Are you even considering our household? I really am, but I'm just a bit exhausted, I replied. My mother-in-law raised her voice, exclaiming, Enough. I can't believe you're our daughter-in-law. My sister-in-law, with a disgusted look, added, I'll watch over Francisco. We don't need someone like you here. When I looked at Francisco, he said coldly, I understand what Mom and Sis are saying. It's a bit difficult to have a wife who doesn't do housework. Looking at Francisco's face, my heart felt heavy. He continued with a cold smile. I have my own store, so I decide how to use my money. But being with someone who spends on anything and everything might be difficult. I was shaken by his words, but I looked into Francisco's eyes and counted to 10. He added with a hint of cruelty. Also, I've noticed things have been going well with that new part-time girl. She's more attractive than you are now. Maybe it's time for you to pack up and find a new place to live. A fire of anger surged within me, though I didn't voice it. Taking a step back and calming myself, I replied after a deep breath, All right. I'll look for a new home. That's better. Finally, you understand. I'll feel much better without you around, he said smugly. Francisco signed the divorce papers that night, and I moved to a nearby weekly rental apartment with just the bare essentials and the divorce paper. No one tried to stop me when I left. Did they ever really care about me? After submitting the divorce papers at the city office, I found a stylish apartment to start fresh. During this time, an unexpected opportunity came my way. A promotion I had been putting off because of my family situation. I seized this chance and began working as a section manager. Every day, as I dedicated myself entirely to my job, I felt a renewed sense of accomplishment. In the midst of these busy days, my phone rang. The caller ID showed it was my former mother-in-law. I thought we had nothing to do with each other anymore, right? Without checking her message, I swiped to dismiss the call. My new life had begun, and I wouldn't look back at the past. A year flew by. One weekend, as I was relaxing in my room, listening to my favorite music, my phone rang again. To my surprise, it was my former mother-in-law. Wondering what she wanted after all this time, I picked up. Hello, is something wrong, Michelle? I finally got through. I didn't think you would answer after so many calls. Well, it's been a while. What's going on? I asked. She hesitated for a moment and then asked, How's your new life? Despite her probing tone, I replied cheerfully, It's great. I love my new apartment, and work is going smoothly. I even got promoted and am living freely. That's good, Michelle. Can you come back home? I was taken aback and blurted out, Why? We're struggling financially. I thought to myself, I knew it, and responded cautiously. Francisco's cafe only makes about $1,000 a month, right? If no one else in the family works, things could be tough. You knew about that? She asked. Yes, Francisco's cafe wasn't doing well. I was fully aware of its financial situation since I handled all the accounting. But he pretended to be the successful owner without understanding the real state of his business. It was almost laughable how oblivious he was. I handled all the finances and procurement, so of course. I sensed her shock. You knew and didn't tell us? We had no idea you were doing so well in such a big company, or that you were contributing so much to the household expenses. My former mother-in-law exclaimed. I admitted, yes, I contributed more than $3,000 every month. Thanks to that, you all managed. The truth was, I used my salary to bridge the gap in Francisco's business losses. He seemed completely unaware of the situation, and after I left, it seemed reality hit hard. "Michelle, can you please come back?" she asked. Curious, I inquired, "So how's Francisco's cave doing now?" She sighed. "We might have to close soon, and the part-time workers keep quitting." With an inward smirk, I commented on his slightly sloppy management style. "It's hard to keep it going for long, isn't it? His little bit of pride doesn't help. Not doing proper work. I mean, how many women out there do you think would be willing to support a guy like that?" My former mother-in-law was momentarily at a loss for words. I continued somewhat sarcastically. "Wait, I'm a bit busy now. Since you left, the house is a mess. It's chaotic with things everywhere." Confused, I asked, "Wait, what do you mean?" She described the disarray of their home with belongings scattered everywhere, looking like a storeroom. Without anyone to cook, they were eating out, which was costing a lot. The washing machine broke down, and it seemed like there's no room in the budget to buy a new one. "Actually, the appliances that you took back, I was really relying on them," my former mother-in-law admitted. Puzzled, I asked, "Huh? Why is that?" "Those were for my convenience. Besides, I bought them myself, so it's okay for me to take them back, right?" She reluctantly agreed, "Yeah, I guess so. But I never realized housework was this challenging." With a firm tone, my former mother-in-law added, "With 3 adults in the house, how can it be that hard? What are Francisco and your daughter doing?" A hint of fatigue could be heard in her voice. As for Francisco, his staff members have been quitting, and sales have plummeted. As soon as he found out, he became really downcast and has just been lazing around at home. But Francisco used to spend his money from the store without any restraint, right? On top of that, Mia doesn't help at all. She doesn't do anything around the house and even gets her allowance from me. To be honest, living on just my pension for the 3 of us is really hard, she continued. I responded with a hint of sarcasm. "Ah, Mia once told me that I was unnecessary because she was there." My former mother-in-law desperately said, "Michelle, we're really in trouble. Living on just my pension for the 3 of us is quite tough." I firmly stated, "I have no intention of returning to that house. It must be hard living with all that baggage." She seemed to be at a loss for words. Seeing her like this made me feel a bit sorry for her. But as I was about to hang up, my former mother-in-law seemed eager to say something. "Michelle, I'm really sorry. Can you reconsider?" Her voice sounded a bit exhausted. I replied, "I wonder if we can ever spend days together with smiles again." "Huh? Was it that hard without me?" I asked with a mix of surprise and calmness. After a short pause, my former mother-in-law took a deep breath. "Yes, there's actually an issue with the property tax. We might have to let go of the house." I said, "I see, but I really don't want to get involved anymore. Decide what you're going to do with your family." I hung up without waiting for her next words. After that, I set it up so I wouldn't receive any more calls from her. In my room, holding my favorite mug filled with aromatic coffee, I enjoyed my time alone, looking at the outside scenery. A smile spontaneously appeared on my face. A few months later, when I passed by the cafe where Francisco used to work, I noticed the place was now quiet and empty. Recalling its past liveliness, I felt a bit nostalgic. It seems they really closed the shop. While walking around the old town, I became curious about my former in-law's house and saw a sold sign. Coincidentally, I bumped into an old neighbor in town. According to her, those 3 had quickly sold their house and moved to a small apartment nearby. In their new home, there were always loud arguments and even the smell of garbage. It seems the neighbors are quite bothered, and it has become a bit of local gossip. I thought, it must be tough for them, but with a bit of effort, life can change. I wondered why they don't try. As I gazed at the old house, these thoughts wandered in my mind. A lot has happened to me since then, but I'm living each day to the fullest. In fact, a handsome guy from my workplace confessed, saying, "I really admire your hardworking nature." Now we're enjoying our dates, and I'm really looking forward to what the future holds. If I get married again, I really want to be happy. I'm feeling very excited about it now.
My in-laws were drunk at the wedding, but they didn't care even though people were whispering about them. They started yelling at me. It's too late now that you're married, but if you want to be part of this family, you need to show us you have enough money, they said. Yes, your dad is right, so make sure to give us $1,000 a month as a new bonus, they added. I was shocked by their demands. I couldn't believe they would say such things at my wedding reception. I just stared at them, feeling my face go pale. My dad took the microphone from them. Enough is enough. Don't you realize you're embarrassing yourselves? He said. My name is Linda. I am a 30-year-old office worker. I am currently dating Larry, who is 32 years old. I met him through a friend who was worried about me being single, so she introduced us. After dating for a year, Larry proposed, and now we are about to get married. I lost my mother when I was very young, and my father raised me on his own. He worked very hard to take care of me. I didn't have many worries growing up, but losing my mom, who I loved so much, deeply hurt me. Because of this, I was very careful with my emotions. That's why I hadn't dated anyone seriously since my school days. I even thought it would be okay if I stayed single forever. Then I met Larry. At first, I didn't feel any romantic feelings for him, even though he asked me out many times. Larry really cared about me and was always a gentleman. Slowly, I began to open my heart to him, and we started dating. He kept caring for me, and I felt very happy. He became very special to me, and I started thinking I wanted to be with him forever. Then he proposed, and we decided to get married. Larry understood everything about me and was always kind to me no matter what. Don't worry, if you're ever feeling unsure about something, I'll be here for you until you feel better. I love you, Linda. You can count on me, he would say. His words moved me. He promised to make me happy for the rest of my life. Just being with him warmed my heart. If he cared that much for me, I thought I should do the same for him. When I told my father that we decided to get married, he was so happy that he cried. Wow, Linda, you're finally getting married. I'm so happy for you, he said. Oh, Dad, you're being dramatic, I joked. Wow, I hadn't heard anything like that from you until now. I was always worried that you might never get married, he replied. Oh, really? I had no idea you were worried about that, I said. Well, every father worries about his daughter, you know. Anyway, congratulations, he said. Thanks, Dad, I replied. I was so happy to be congratulated by my dad, who had raised me by himself. I thought I would probably cry at the wedding, and my dad would probably cry even more since he was already crying now. With that, Larry and I started preparing for our wedding. We were both busy with our jobs, so our days were very hectic. We worked during the weekdays and made wedding preparations over the weekends. There was no time to rest. Our calendars were always full. On a rare day off, we were supposed to visit Larry's parents' house. I was going to meet Larry's parents for the first time. Larry had come over to meet my father right after he proposed to me. Originally, I had planned to visit Larry's parents right after that to introduce myself. But they were very busy, and our schedules never matched. Finally, some time passed, and we managed to arrange a visit. As we arrived at his parents' house, I suddenly felt nervous. Don't worry, my parents are very kind, Larry reassured me. His words made me feel a bit better, and I rang the doorbell. It was his mother who opened the door. Mom, I'm home, Larry said. Welcome home, Larry. It's so good of you to come, his mother replied warmly. As she talked with her son, I greeted her as politely as I could. Nice to meet you. My name is Linda, and I'm Larry's fiancée. I see, so you're Linda, she said. Her voice was much lower than when she spoke to Larry, and her smile vanished. She looked me up and down as if judging me. Then she led us to the living room, where her cold attitude didn't change. Linda, I'm curious about what you bring to the table. Larry is our treasure and our only child. If you're going to marry him, you need to be a suitable wife. Are you worthy of him? She asked, more like an interrogation. I was taken aback by her question. I hadn't expected such a cold attitude from my future mother-in-law and was at a loss for words. You're going to join our family, you know. Are you ready for that? She continued. True, marrying Larry meant joining his family. But it's not like Larry's family were the Kennedys or some well-known high society family. It's not like I was marrying into a royal family. Why was I being asked to make such a commitment? Besides, I wasn't even going to live with them. I don't like being pressured with questions like these. As I was trying to figure out how to respond, his mother seemed impatient with my slow reply and scolded me harshly. When I ask you a question, answer me right away. You're so rude, she snapped. I'm asking if you're ready for this, she continued, raising her voice. Despite feeling overwhelmed, I managed to say, I hope that Larry and I will support each other in our marriage. When I said that, his mother was not convinced. What a naive thing to say. You aren't just going to support each other. You are supposed to support Larry. It's your job as a wife to support your husband. You don't even understand the basics, she criticized. Then Larry's father, who was sitting next to her, intervened. Honey, calm down. Sorry about that, Linda. You must have been startled by my wife's words, he said, trying to ease the tension. It's all right, I replied, trying to remain calm. His mother is very protective of her only son. Maybe she was just nervous and spoke without thinking. Just then, Larry's brother walked in. He spoke in a quiet, calm, and gentle tone. He seemed like a kind man, which gave me a moment of relief, but that relief was short-lived. With a smile on his face, he said the most unexpected thing. What my wife says is actually justified. What concerns me the most is that you come from a single-parent family. What do you mean by that? I asked, confused. Well, being raised by just one parent doesn't have a good public image. We can't be too happy to have such a person become the wife of our only son, can we? He explained. Hold on a minute, I said, unable to let this comment slide. What is wrong with being raised by a single parent? My father worked very hard to raise me by himself. I am very thankful for my upbringing, and I am proud of my father. Being raised by a single parent doesn't make me any less valuable. But they still argued. Since you were missing one parent, you couldn't have learned how to be a good wife, do housework, and such. I responded, I did a lot of housework to help my father. I can also cook pretty well, so please don't say that. Despite my response, Larry's mother ignored what I said and finally stated, I will allow you to marry Larry, but in exchange, you must promise to devote everything to us because we are Larry's parents. Can you promise me that? I was shocked. What? Since you came here to ask for our permission to marry our son, you do know what your duties are, don't you? Before I could say more, he continued the conversation. I found that my in-laws had completely taken over the conversation, giving me little chance to respond. That night, as I thought more about the marriage, I decided to share my feelings with Larry. Say, Larry, do your parents always talk to people like that? What about it? Larry seemed unfazed. I was surprised that Larry didn't see anything wrong with what his parents had said to me. Well, I mean the way your parents spoke to me and what they said, I tried to explain. Oh really? Well, they were just talking about whether you were ready for this marriage. I get that your parents are worried about their son's marriage, but I feel like what your parents were saying was a bit too much. Really? Why is that? My parents didn't say anything wrong. Besides, they've given us permission to get married, so don't worry about it. That's true, but I felt uneasy that Larry seemed to side with his parents more than with me. That was very troubling. I guess he realized I was feeling unsure because he gave me a hug. Linda, you don't have to worry so much. My parents are just a bit upset because their only son is getting married, he said. He spoke as if he didn't fully support me. It's all going to be fine. Don't overthink it. I'm sure they just want what's best for us. They want us to be as good of a couple as they are. That's why they were a bit harsh. Oh really? I replied, like he said maybe his parents have high expectations for us. But even if that's the case, I don't think it's right for them to belittle me because I was raised by my father. I don't think people who say such things make a good couple. We are the ones getting married, and we should be the focus, not their approval or disapproval. With that perspective, although I was still a bit upset, I decided not to dwell too much on his parents' opinions. Then the day of the wedding arrived. We had many guests, including our relatives, friends, colleagues, and bosses. I walked down the aisle with my father, who had raised me all my life. Larry and I exchanged our vows and rings. We were met with applause, and for the first time, I truly realized that I was getting married to Larry. I felt a happiness I had never felt before. As we walked into the reception hall, we made our way through the crowd, greeted by videos of us as part of the entertainment. It was a joyful time. I chatted with friends I hadn't seen in a while, and many people congratulated us. Despite my earlier worries about his parents, I was glad I had decided to marry Larry. I was glad we decided to have a memorable day. After the ceremony, we planned to officially register our marriage, and Larry and I would become husband and wife. I cherished every moment and felt so happy. Time flew by, and soon it was time for the final part of the event. The bridegroom and both sets of parents lined up to greet the guests. But I started to feel uneasy because of Larry's parents. We were all supposed to be standing in line, but his parents were wobbly on their feet. If you looked closely, you could see that their faces were bright red. They had drunk too much. Some relatives asked if they were okay. My in-laws were clearly drunk. But we had to wrap up the ceremony and get it over with. The moderator handed the microphone to me and Larry. Suddenly, Larry's mother snatched my hand away from him and yelled at me like a professional wrestler in the middle of a challenge. "Listen to me, Linda. After this wedding, you are going to devote yourself to us completely. Prepare yourself because we are going to test you really hard." The guests started whispering to each other, and some even thought it was a joke and laughed. Then Larry's father grabbed the microphone. "Linda, don't you feel embarrassed to wear a dress like that?" "It doesn't suit you at all, dear. You should tell her the truth," his mother chimed in. As expected, the whispers among the guests changed in tone. I looked at Larry, hoping he would stop his father's rude comments, but Larry said he couldn't do that and that his parents weren't doing anything wrong. It became clear he would never protect me from his parents in the future. That was the moment I realized it. I was certain of it even as the hall buzzed around us. My in-laws were drunk and continued to insult me. "Well, you're already married, but if you're going to be part of this family, you need to prove that you have enough money," they said. "Yes, that's right," they continued. "After you register your marriage at the city hall, you should give us a few thousand a month and your entire bonus." I was shocked by their words. I never thought they would say such things at our wedding reception. I just stared at them, feeling my face go pale. My father took the microphone from them. "Enough of this. Don't you realize you're making fools of yourselves?" he said, though still showing some respect. His parents glared at my father. "Why are you interrupting us while we're talking?" I knew this woman's father was no good. "Single parents are never any good," they said. How dare they insult my father? I thought. My father, keeping his cool, replied, "You people are even worse than I imagined. You even refuse to meet me because I am a single father. I never thought that someone like you would work for President Scott. President Scott is such a respectable person. I assumed his employees would be decent as well." At that, my father-in-law's face turned very serious. How do you know President Scott?" "He's a business partner of my company and, more importantly, an old friend of mine," my father explained. "And speaking of single parents, President Scott was raised by his mother alone. So you just insulted the president of the company you work for." Seeing my in-laws' faces fall at my father's words, I realized they finally understood the mess they had gotten themselves into. "I apologize, sir. Please don't tell the president about this," my in-law pleaded, suddenly falling to his knees. Just moments before, he had acted like he was in charge, but now he looked defeated. I could hear laughter from the guests. Some even pulled out their cell phones to record the scene. "No matter how much you apologize, you can't take back your words," my dad said. He walked over to me and asked if I wanted to go home with him. I said yes and took the microphone from Larry's hand. "Thank you for the great entertainment, but there will be no marriage," I announced to Larry and his parents and to everyone who attended. "I will make sure to return the money you gave us for this occasion." Then I left the reception hall with my dad. I caught a glimpse of Larry and his parents looking dismayed, and soon after, his relatives rushed over with worried expressions on their faces. The place must have been in complete chaos. As I returned their money, I apologized to the guests. They all expressed sympathy for me and praised me and my dad for our actions, saying it was good that we weren't taken advantage of by such terrible people. Later, Larry's coworkers who had attended the reception must have spread the word about what happened at his company. Larry became known for having such unreasonable parents and was criticized for having a weak character. His embarrassment was so great that he resigned voluntarily. Of course, the president of my father-in-law's company found out about the incident. Larry's father was demoted and sent to an insignificant division of the company, transferred to a remote office in the countryside. I heard that Larry's family has been ostracized by all his relatives because of what happened at the wedding. While it's unfortunate, it really was their own doing, and sometimes things like that just can't be avoided. In the meantime, I've been using this opportunity to strengthen my relationship with my dad. We've been spending more quality time together, and it's helped me appreciate all he's done for me even more. One day, he sat me down for a serious talk. "Linda, are you interested in running the business?" he asked, looking at me with a mixture of hope and seriousness. "Do you mean?" I started, a bit unsure where he was heading with this. "Why don't you work towards becoming the president of my company?" he suggested. It was a big step, and he seemed to believe I was ready to take it on. "I'll do my best," I promised him, feeling a mix of excitement and nervousness. I decided then to focus on stepping up my game at work rather than getting entangled in romantic relationships for now. I wanted to prove to myself and to my dad that I could excel and perhaps one day be a great leader like him. Currently, I am deeply involved in learning everything I can at my dad's company. The work is challenging but fulfilling, and I'm determined to make the most of this opportunity. Reflecting on the wedding fiasco, it's clear that Larry's in-laws were quite unreasonable, turning what should have been a beautiful event into a spectacle. Thankfully, since the marriage wasn't officially registered, I was spared from a legally binding mistake. Now, free from any marital ties and with no looming in-law issues, I can focus solely on my career aspirations. It's a relief to know that out of a chaotic situation came a clear path forward for me. I look forward to what the future holds and am excited about the potential of leading the company. I wish myself all the best and hope that anyone watching this story can take something valuable from it. Thank you for staying till the end. Please consider subscribing if you enjoyed this story, and I hope to see you in the next video.